episode 131 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So, we are finishing our tandem read today.
We are.
This is it. Like, we're here. We've climbed the mountain.
That is true.
We're reaching the top. We're about to plant our flag right in the top. So, I guess for our little, intro conversation this week, we're just gonna, talk about how you found it, what did you think of doing a tandem read? Would you do it again? And just our final takeaways of a tandem read, because I know it's my first time ever doing a tandem read, and I think it's also yours. So we're just going to get into, our final takeaways.
Yeah. It's funny, because it is... Yeah, it's definitely my first tandem read. It's probably the first time I've really heard of doing a tandem read was with these two books. I'd like to look it up because I don't know how many other books there are that it's recommended to tandem read, even. I gotta say, there's a lot of... I felt like there was a lot of logistics to it, figuring out the chapters and making sure that you didn't keep reading or listening to the wrong chapters if you, just got into a groove of reading one of the books. It'd be hard to stop. So I found that a bit hard, and I don't think I would have done it the first time I read the books because, if you're looking through the books to try to figure out the chapters, sometimes you read shit. So if I hadn't read the books before and I was trying to tab them, I'd be afraid I'd find a spoiler. But yeah, I really appreciate whoever put this tandem read together and figured out the correct spots, because I gotta say, it was impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely a big fan of that. And yeah, I liked it. I don't think I would have done it for my first read. I don't know, I do feel like it was maybe easier to read Tower of Dawn when Kingdom of Ash wasn't available because you didn't really have a choice. And I know some people struggle with finishing Empire of Storms and going to Tower of Dawn when they can get their answers because Kingdom of Ash exists. But yeah. I just don't... I don't know if it is practical for everyday reading.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I did enjoy doing this as a tandem. Yeah, whoever came up with this, hats off, because that is a phenomenal effort to figure out, considering that the tandem read was not SJM's intention.
No.
So, way to go to whoever. And I'm sure there are actually several different versions and several people have come up with, their own way to do it. I agree with you. It's not the next time I want to read Empire of Storms or Tower of Dawn, I'm probably not. It doesn't have to be every time I read this book I have to do a tandem. Because I agree with you, it was hard stopping and going to the other book, especially when some of the spaces do leave, some of the spots do leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And
which is so SJM coded.
100%.
Which I love. But I also, I hated.
But, the problem is that a couple of times while I was doing the tandem read, I was so invested that I did keep going for a couple of chapters. Mm-hmm. And then I went back and, did it properly, but like I'm a person where if I'm really invested in what's happening and it's a really good storyline, I don't stop reading. I'll stay up until 3 a.m. to finish it. Yeah, that's the type of reader I am. So like I did sometimes find it really hard doing this switch when I was in a story. And like, granted, there were actually parts where in Tower of Dawn, I was like, I don't want to put it down right now.
Yeah.
Which is saying something for Tower of Dawn.
Because we complain about it.
All the time.
But, yes. But yeah, no, you're right.
I just like, I do appreciate it and I'm glad we did it. I don't know if I'll do it again just because I've done it now.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So, yeah.
Yeah. We're very similar feelings about it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to read a book. Like, I don't know, you wouldn't really think to do it other than somebody obviously came up with this one.
Yeah, like when I Google like best books to tandem read or tandem reading books or anything, the top Google search is from a website called the Tandem Collective, which makes you think that. And then there's like, and then there's a list of books, but it's actually just like a marketing studio, and some missus who works there wrote an article on like the best fantasy books to get you into fantasy. So like, there's a list of books, including ACOTAR, which is not Throne of Glass. So that sort of is it's like a, what is this? And like Game of Thrones and all that sort of thing. So like, it's not actually what you think it's going to be.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm not really finding very much.
Yeah. Well, that kind of makes sense because there isn't really many books that, like, I don't think I'd ever heard of tandem reading the books before this series.
No. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess just a heads up, as per usual, this is not a spoiler-free zone and things might get saucy.
They're gonna get wild is what they're gonna get.
They're gonna fucking get wild.
They're gonna
Don't worry about the saucy this week.
Yeah, they're gonna fuck us up.
They are gonna fuck us up.
I will say, the tandem part of the reading this week is really easy. We're literally gonna read the entire end of Empire of Storms, and then we're gonna read the entire end of Tower of Dawn, so it's broken up quite nicely.
Yeah, it was. And like, I get, there's like, as soon as you start reading the Tower of Dawn part, you're like, oh, that's why they had to end that book first. Because they literally reference it immediately.
Yeah.
In the first, and you're like, shit.
Yeah.
So I guess starting with, oh wait, so this is our last week. I think we have kind of covered that.
Yeah.
It's week 9 of our tandem read. So we're doing chapters 68 to 75 of Empire of Storms and chapters 58 to Fireheart, so the end of Tower of Dawn. Last week, I'll start with Tower of Dawn because Chaol and Yrene found out, we're going to say in quotation marks, that healers can fight, in quotation marks, Valg somehow. And Yrene figured out, in quotation marks, that there was something inside of her, like something the Valg was like, and she now knows how to heal them. And she basically did the last piece of healing Chaol's back.
Yeah.
And
didn't they have like really
sex?
Yeah, they had like reunion sex because they fought, and then she healed him, and then it was like, yay, sexy times.
Yeah.
Did they?
I think they did.
Correct.
That makes sense. And then Nezrin and Sartak are like asking all of the different clans of Rook to fight, and they finally came to a decision. But before they can hear what the decision is, Chaol asked for help, so they're like, we need to leave immediately. He never asks for help, and we didn't get the letter, but I really wanted to read that letter. Also, they told Falcon that Lysandra might be his niece. So he's going to go with them when they go to the north. In Empire of Storms, almost everybody is together-ish. Aelin and Manon are actually in a mirror looking at memories of how Elena fucked up the world. And almost everybody else is fighting Maeve, so of the main people. And Abraxas is missing. In the fighting Maeve, I think last week we got that Rowan's cousins are now on his side.
Yeah.
So they started fighting against Maeve.
They started fighting for
the good guys, like they did for Aelin.
Yeah.
For love, for a better world. And also Maeve called Gavriel and Fenris back to her and pointed, and Lorcan said, "Oh shit, that's where Elide is." So, and somebody appeared in front of Elide. We had her point of view for a second. Because she's just on the beach. Safe? In quotation marks? Not anymore.
Sorry.
That's good.
Thanking you. Was that the last one? No, there's one more.
Okay. So this week, with Empire of Storm chapter 68 to 75, we start in Aelin's point of view, and she's thinking that it's agony to see Nehemia young and alive again. And, yeah. And to know that Nehemia knew about Elena, because obviously she has to confront the fact that Nehemia lied to her, which is hard.
But she sort of knew part, like, I feel like she knew part of this. Like, she knew that Nehemia had been visiting, like, the Elena's, like, tomb in the castle.
Yeah.
Below her room and stuff. I feel like she knew a little bit.
And she did find out already that Nehemia orchestrated her own death.
Yeah.
But I think, like, watching it happen in this memory is, like, sad. Mm-hmm. And actually, this exact scene that she sees here is straight from... We saw it in Crown of Midnight. There was a scene, and it was like the princess went to talk to the queen, and she said, we need you to sacrifice yourself, one of them to be ready. And she's like, it'll break her. And then, like, obviously we knew who it was. But it's exactly that scene. And Nehemia says, like, it'll break Selena, basically. But they're like, you have to do it. And Aelin doesn't know if she can watch any more truths. And she knows, like, nameless is my price. So she knows that she's going to have to give up her power. She kind of already realized that, but she's still coming to terms with it, I guess.
Yeah. And, like, she still isn't fully 100% aware
of every part of everything. Yeah. She sees Brandon and Elena argue in Terrasen, and she knows that Elena never returns. And I'm assuming this is, like, shortly after the battle, but it's just, like, interesting because we assume they're arguing over the lock, but I'm like, it seems like an added scene that maybe we didn't need. But who knows?
Well, like, do you know what it does for me in a not a positive way, because it's not positive, but, like, we sort of had this, and maybe this was a self-inflicted image of, I had this image of, like, Brandon and Elena having this, like, amazing father-daughter relationship and being super close and, like, being these, like, magnanimous, like, effective, like, peaceful, like, perfect rulers. And I don't know, it kind of, like, not in a bad way, but it sort of shatters that vision of them being, like, these great, because, like, everything is like, oh, back in Brandon's time, you know what I mean? Like, it sort of, like, makes it seem like it was perfect.
Yeah.
And seeing this moment of, like, them arguing and never seeing each other again. it just sort of like it breaks that illusion of, well, maybe it wasn't the most amazing time period.
Yes. My issue with it, I guess, is if Aelin somehow knows that this is the last time they see each other, like, she just knows, like, there's nothing showing in the memory that says this is the last time.
Yeah.
She just knows it.
Yeah.
Then it makes it seem like Aelin knew something about their story that we didn't. And it's like, we're 7 books into this, or 6, whatever. So it just feels like it's something that we should have learned along the way as well, if Aelin knew it.
But,
you know what I mean?
But it could have just, the way I interpret it was more of her getting the feeling during the argument that this was not something that they could come back from.
Okay.
That's
Maybe.
how I read it. It wasn't that she learned it before. It was that she was getting a feeling from the argument. Like, that it was so severe, she knew they wouldn't be able to come back from it.
Yeah. I guess.
But
I just feel like, you know, if you're an immortal, I guess maybe immortals hold grudges longer. Because I'm like, you'd just think that you'd be able to
get over it.
That's my daughter. I should get over this, or I'm never going to see her again. But nope.
I mean, she did doom the entire continent.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
You make a point. So, then there's a memory with Rianne and Kraken explaining the mirror and, like, how it'll hold the memories and crap. And she looks exactly like Manon. And I'm like, how did nobody realize this before now?
I guess no one is alive.
But wasn't the Yellow Legs matron or something there? Like, her grandmother was there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the Baba Yellowlegs would have been there, even though, like, she obviously... But, like, you'd think she would have met Manon before. Like, there has to be some of them that are old enough for this.
That's true. But maybe your mind fades, like, when you live that long. There's no way you can remember what everybody looks like.
Yeah, that's true. I just was like, they could have been like, you can see the resemblance. But it was like, nope, exact same face. And it's like, okay. And then we get Brandon crying at Elena's death, basically, I guess, maybe-ish funeral kind of thing. But she lived to an old age because she gave up her immortality to live a normal life with Gavin.
So this is, to me, what Lorcan's gonna do.
Yes. She can't say that. You have to cut that.
But you know what I mean? We were having this discussion before.
Yeah.
Okay. Reminder. Cut that.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's exactly what he's going to do. He's lived for so long. He's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. My bad.
That's okay. And while he's at, like, his daughter, who is very old, casket, I guess, is more a thing. Who knows? I don't know what it's like. Brandon still looks like he's in his 20s, which is wild.
Hilarious. Not hilarious. It's not funny, but, like, kind of is.
Well, it's just, like, it's crazy because in the beginning of this book, they were like, he's dying out. Like, his...
Yes.
Like, you'd think he'd look at least 60 or 70. Yeah. Like, why does he look in his 20s when he was about to kill himself to forge the lock? And they said his power was dying out. Like, how does he look that young? Because, like, we can kind of assume Gavin... I guess I can't assume anything. Maybe Gavin only lives another 10 years or something. I don't know. Anyway, he looks 20. Then we get a montage of Brandon forging the Amulet of Orinth with what key inside of it and putting on the back of it, "Nameless is my price" in word marks. And Brandon building Elena's tomb, writing the poem, and putting Mort there, and also leaving the key in her crown. And then
essentially he's setting up a scavenger hunt.
He is, yeah. And then he went to Mala's temple, and this part, I think, is kind of stupid. Because he's like, only his heir can get past the molten river to the temple in the middle. And you're like, that's smart. And then he's like, or someone holding another one of the keys. And you're like...
Well, then what the fuck's the point?
Yeah, I guess maybe there's nowhere in the world that someone that's holding a key can't get, but, like, we don't really know what kind of power they really give.
No.
So, anyway.
So, like,
basically,
so who got that key?
The king.
He went and got that key.
He got the first key from her crown, and then he found this key, and he could get to it because he had the first key. You're like, okay, this seems like a convenience.
Yeah.
But basically, like, it's a temple in the middle of a molten river, so he basically puts the third key there, and then just walks into the river and dies.
It's a terrible way to die.
Awful. Would not recommend. Aelin is crying then, obviously, because that's devastating to watch.
And yeah, it's her ancestor as well.
Yeah. And she thinks, like, he did what he could for her. Like, he put the poem there, and he put the thing on the back of the nameless is my price on the back of the amulet. So, like, he tried to leave clues, but also time's just going to take all that shit away anyway.
Yeah.
Manon is still there, and she doesn't understand what the hell is going on, which is just kind of funny. Elena then appears in, like, the present, which is interesting, but of course, and talks to her, and she says that she's sorry, and this is the only way. And Aelin asks if it's, like, if they've chosen her to spare Gavin's bloodline. And Elena says Dorian wasn't ready. And Aelin obviously is annoyed at that. Like, that's not a reason.
No.
She wasn't ready either. And Elena tells her it was so easy to say yes at the time, but she has suffered getting to know Aelin and getting to know Nehemia. Like, it's obviously so much worse than she expected it to be when she said yes to the gods. And she says what I was hoping for and forgot happened. But she says she was wrong because she thought Erewhon would rise and the world would face him, which was dumb. She didn't realize, like, all of the suffering that would happen. She didn't realize that people wouldn't just magically band together. Like, why would you ever think that?
Because she is an idealist.
Yeah,
and wasn't an actual ruler at the time. Right?
Yeah.
She was just, like, not just a princess. I'm not saying that to be, like, dismissive. But, like, her father was king. Her mate was Gavin even a king at that point? I don't know.
I don't know. He might have just been a prince
like
as well.
No, because I don't think he was royal born. Wasn't he a general or something? And then Brannon gave him
the
Aderlin
right.
as a territory to be king of.
Yeah.
So, like, she doesn't have any experience in ruling.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, obviously she's this little idealist. She's grew up as a princess. She doesn't know anything about suffering.
Yeah.
Sorry, she really angers me.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that's a good point. So she says that she heard all of the voices yelling and asking for a better world. And that Aelin was born powerful and special, and she was the queen who was promised. And, like, we've heard that said before, but now we realize that she's promised to the gods, not to change the world or make anything better. Aelin then realizes, like, herself, and I don't really know how she makes this jump, but she realizes that she didn't actually live that night that she jumped into the river. She's just like, I didn't live, did I? And I'm like, whoa, how did you... Okay. So she asks Elena to show her, and they basically watched the memory of little Aelin jumping where the bridge was cut and falling into the water and tumbling around. And Elena says there was too much death, and she was so small, and she was fighting so much that the gods were like, yep, we'll give you a body to help her out, but then you need to take her, find the keys, and we'll do the lock right now, basically. But Elena was like, you were fighting too much.
Yeah.
I had to give you more time. So she brought her to the shore, and Aelin actually froze to death. And she was like, I thought it was going to be the drowning we'd have to worry about, but it was actually that you were so
cold,
small and cold, which makes sense. And Elena thought it was so unfair she couldn't allow it for Aelin's sake, so she used fire to give her life back. And then she tugged Erebin out of bed to find Aelin. And she's like, I knew who he was, but I figured a life with Erebin was better than being dead. And I'm like, I guess when you put that caveat there, sure. Because it wasn't a great life for a child.
This is where I sort of, like, I get it. You see a child suffering. Obviously, that's heartbreaking. You want to do whatever you can to save that child. However, one, she saved the child and put her in the hands of Erebin, which is awful. But then, two, she knew that further down the road, she would be forced to sacrifice herself anyway. So, like, what's the point? Why bother keeping her alive only for her to live miserably for years until you're ready for her? Like, to me, that's just pointless. Like, if in your head she's gonna die, then why bother extending it and putting her in the hands of someone you know is gonna cause her pain? That's just like saying, hey, you're 8. You're gonna die now, or I'll put you in Guantanamo Bay for a few years, and then I'll kill you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just...
I do, yeah.
It seems so silly.
It really doesn't make any sense that she does this way. And then, like, yeah, I don't get it. I guess there wouldn't be a story. But she's only making herself more attached to this child by letting it live and grow, too. So, like, it's worse for her, Aelin, than her. Anyway, so Erebin gets out of bed and finds Aelin, and we watch him steal the amulet, of course. And... yeah, she basically just says that she wanted Aelin to be able to live. And Aelin's like, but what was the price? Because obviously the gods are going to be pissed. Yeah. She didn't do what they said. And Elena kind of explains that she needs to go with the gods when they leave, so she doesn't actually get to rest in whatever the afterworld here is.
Does it say that she goes with the gods, like... Because I thought what she insinuated was that when the gods leave, like, when Aelin's part is done, I thought Elena would just fade away.
Yeah, but if she just faded away, I think she'd go to, like, the afterlife to, like, Gavin and her father. But I think the gods basically are taking her to their place and, like, ripping her apart like they're ripping Erewhon apart. Like, she's going to be nothing anymore.
Yeah, okay.
So she doesn't get, like, peace after death. She'll just be nothing.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, Brandon is somewhere that he's able to, like, come back as a ghost.
Yeah.
Anyway. Don't really understand the afterworld, because there's also, like, you can get a portal to the afterworld in this place, because she saw Nehemia after she died, so it's like, I don't really understand all these different worlds on worlds and having being dead being its own world. But anyway. So yeah, she'll be gone forever. And Elena says, like, she had, like, Aelin had to understand it all to be able to do this. And I'm like, this is stupid. And Aelin even says the same thing. Like, she's like, why didn't you just tell me before now? They've talked before. And she's like, well, I could only stay for a few minutes at a time.
Stupid. And
you were broken by, like, slavery. And it's like, yeah, such a good life that you gave her. Jesus. But I'm like, why didn't you just get Nehemia to tell her what she had to do? Nehemia could have given her all the information. I don't know why they had to come find this lock to be like, yeah, it's a lot of steps.
It's very convoluted for, hey, by the way, you have to sacrifice yourself and die in order to make this lock because I screwed up ages ago and now the gods need a sacrifice. And you're it, babe.
Yeah. Aelin does say that, like, she figured it out a little while ago, and she's put things in place, but she does ask if Elena will come with her when she, like, goes to force the lock so that she's not alone. And she says she will, but also, like, she's going to be invisible, so, like, you wouldn't even know she's there. It's like, cool, that's helpful. Aelin asks why Elena sent her to Wendelin, because obviously Maeve is a threat too, and Elena says she sent her to heal and find him. And I'm like, how does everybody know? Like, how does Elena know that her and Rowan were gonna, like, find each other and heal each other? Like, how does she know that?
I feel like everybody knows something except for us.
Yeah. Anyway, she says that Rowan was one of the voices in the void asking for a better world, and Elena says he is ... and Aelin says she knows and has known for a long time. And Elena says that she wanted her to know that too.
Which is
and we're
stupid.
Like, yeah. I wanted you to know the best love in your entire life so you could lose it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, great grandmother.
Yeah. So Elena says, like, the magic is fading and she's going to disappear again, so she needs to show her how to forge the lock. And she'll disappear, but she'll be with her the whole time. And I'm like, she could just not be, and nobody would know the difference.
Aelin wouldn't know.
Yeah. So, yeah. They basically... Aelin watches whatever she does to do the lock, and now she knows it. We don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's some sort of, like, magic something.
Yeah, but we don't really get any of the information till the next book.
Yeah.
Aelin thinks, like, she did what she could to get help for Terrasen, and, like, it'll be fine. She's prepared for this. Like, she's basically ready to go die. So you're like, good, this is what we wanted. Mm-hmm. They get transported back to the sands, exactly where Aelin and Maeve are. And we're like, this is convenient. And Aelin is on her knees, and a Fey male has a blade at her throat. So on that cliffhanger, we go over to Aedion's point of view, and it's going bad. So he's on one of the ships, and, like, I don't even know what that word is. Anyway, he's on one of the ships, and he and Lysandra are fighting. She's a ghost leopard now. The Fae realize that she was...
smashing their boats at the bottom.
Yeah, so they actually put magic shields on the bottom. Yeah. Makes sense. So now she's on the boat fighting alongside him. And he tells her that she should leave. And she goes over to him in her glorious ghost leopard form and, like, nuzzles his face and his neck to be like, no, I'm staying with you. And he says, next time you do that, do it as a human. And you're like, bleh. Rowan and Dorian are using their power, and they're, like, doing well, but some ships are getting past, and, like, I guess it's Ansel's army on one side and Aedion and I guess Ralph's people on the other. So they're not, I guess, fighting a whole lot, because Dorian and Rowan are getting most of the people, but there's still, like, a few scragglers getting around. And before his father disappeared, he put a shield on Aedion. That was just, like, a golden light that, like, sucked into him so that he'd have, like, some protection. And he also put one on Lysandra, too, which I kind of love, because you can tell that he knows how much she means to Aedion.
But not enough to call her by her name.
No. But he doesn't call himself or Aedion by the name either. So you're like, okay. We actually go over to Dorian's point of view now, and he's kind of burning out. And then he hears Aedion scream, and then he hears roars, and he knows those roars, and he sees 13 wyverns. Don't know why that sounded weird. There was really nothing there other than he's, like, at the end of his power, he's doing too much, and then wyverns. We go to Lysandra's point of view, and she knows the roar that she heard, and she sees Abraxos. And Rowan yells out to hold your fire, because obviously there's, like, Ansel's there, like, all of...
They're gonna assume witches means Erewhon and, like, go for it.
Exactly. And, like, his cousins and shit have magic, so... Anyway, they're lucky that he stops them in time. So the witches and wyverns attack the Fae and kind of give them a bit of a reprieve. And Astrid lands by Aedion, which is great because we didn't know for sure that Astrid was still alive. And she asks where Manon is. And he says it's a long story, but she's here somewhere kind of thing. Yeah. And he says if she helps them, he'll tell her whatever she wants. So then the 13 go and attack. And Lysandra wishes she had the strength to change so that she could join in on the fight with them, because it's just like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It makes me like, it gives me like a feminist happiness.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny, but I love it. We go to Rowan's point of view now, and he's lagging too, but no one on their side is backing down. They're all doing well. And then with the witches now, Maeve's armada actually starts to retreat. So he actually whistles to Astrid to attack them as they're trying to run away. And they chase. And he shifts into, obviously, a hawk and goes up and, like, tries to check the boats. And Maeve's boat is missing. So he's like, what the fuck? So he dives down to Aedion and Lysandra's ship, and Aedion asks if she's back. And Rowan notices that, like, Aedion is injured and he's going to need some healing. And Lysandra shifts back into a person. And then Dorian just, like, pops up and says, she's by the coast where they sent a lead. And he's just like, he can feel them there. And it's just interesting. Like, I want to know more about his magic, because for some reason he can feel them all, but, like, nobody else really felt them over there. So he says that he can feel Lorcan and Aelin and someone else powerful and female. And Rowan is just like, shit. And he thinks, like, they'd never get there fast enough in a boat, and he doesn't have enough power to fly himself over and then have any power left to help. But he says maybe a wyvern is fast enough to get them there, and he'll still have some energy. Spoiler alert, it's not. So we go back to Aelin's point of view, and Manon's iron nails are just out, and she's looking at a lead, and she's pissed. So Aelin, like, brings on her swagger, and she really has to put it on because she's really
out of it. Yeah,
kind of not feeling it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Maeve obviously, like, makes a comment on it, and Aelin says it's because she has so many pretty males in her company. And then Lorcan shows up, and he, like, stands beside Aelin like they're gonna fight together, and you're like, you're a moron. Manon says, let the girl go, and Maeve says she knows Manon's face, which is funny because we just had that conversation. But she also says that, like, this girl is claimed by Queen, Witch, and her second. So that's, like, interesting. And Maeve, like, drops the bomb that this is the girl that Lorcan summoned her to save. And Lorcan just says he's sorry. And Aelin's like, she doesn't know if it's to her or if it's to a lead. She's like, okay. But Aelin actually says she knew that it was a summoning, and she took precautions. And in her head, she thinks, like, she knows it's her fault because she wanted to, like, surprise people that it was Ansel, and she didn't immediately say, like, these are our allies.
Yeah, so...
But still.
So I guess we sort of learn that in that commotion, when everyone thought that that armada was actually Melisandre's armada, and they were all exhausted, and they all had no way out, that's when Lorcan summoned Maeve to save a lead, but then we got it that it wasn't Melisandre, it was actually Ansel, and so Aelin's like, well, that's what I get for being dramatic, like...
It's like, she's taken it well. I would not take it this well.
But, like, she did the same thing, though, to Rolf with the with the sea wyverns and the Valg, like, she did the exact same thing. So, of course, she recognized it.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Dorian didn't recognize it, because he recognized it when Aelin did it.
Right.
But maybe we didn't really get much in his head. Maybe he did recognize it and we just didn't hear it. But yeah. So she is a few steps ahead. Maybe not enough, though. Aelin asks what Maeve wants of Aelid. And then we skip over to Aelid's point of view. And Maeve asks what she should ask for the girl. And then she asks what Lorcan's been up to and where her ring and the keys are. And Aelid thinks that, like, the ring she's talking about must be the ring that she's wearing. Because she's still wearing that ring.
Yes. Which is
probably smart, maybe.
I don't know if it is, though, because it's like, just like, it's definitely for protection. I feel like she would know this at this point. So, like, hide your hand. But, like, I also do think that Maeve would never expect to look at her hand and find it.
No, and I think she does have it hidden. But it is, like, obviously it is that ring. So Lorcan then, like, in a kind of smart move, just answers one of the questions. Because obviously if she had asked them separately, he would have had to say, the ring is on her finger.
Yeah.
But he just says that Aelin has 2 keys and likely knows where the third is. And Aelid is, like, shocked. And we're like, Aelid, she kind of annoys me in this part. I kind of wish it wasn't in her point of view. And I understand where she's coming from. But I'm also like, I don't know. I don't know what else you could really do. But she's, like, pissed at Lorcan at every turn, which I get. But it's like, he can't do anything. So stop pleading with him and do something else. But she says his name, and he just tells her to shut up. And Maeve is like, oh, you're very familiar with him. Which is obviously odd for someone in Lorcan. And Aelin just says to let the girl go. They'll settle this the fun way. And she starts, like, summoning her flame. And it starts in her hand. And it starts to grow. And she, like, moves by Manon and, like, pushes her back. And then she goes to Maeve. And Aelid knows that, like, Aelin has no power left. And Maeve actually says that Aelin is clearly burnt out. And she is the one who told Morath that Aelin was in the marshes. So she knew that she'd use all of her power on the Ilkin that came. And that she'd put out the fires. And that would, like, all accumulate in her burning out. And she says if she had any magic left, that's what her armada was for. So we're like, great. She was just going to sacrifice her armada, and she doesn't care about any of them.
No, but it also sort of shows us that, like, Maeve is just as strategic and intelligent as Aelin is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maeve does at this point just mention that, like, Prince Rowan rose to the occasion, though, because, like, obviously his cousins came to fight with him. And it kind of gives Aelid some hope that maybe everybody isn't dead. So Aelid just, like, starts begging Manon and Lorcan to do something, but they can't. And Aelin just tells Manon to move out of range, and she covers herself in flame. And Maeve just says, like, she's not here to kill Aelin, though. And you're like, that's worse.
Yeah.
So fire and darkness explode. And this is, like, our first real view, I guess, at Maeve's power. And it just seems like it's black.
Yeah, it's
like,
just dark shadow, yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting with, like, obviously Akatar World and all of that, like...
Yeah.
Any of their powers and stuff.
Do you know what it reminds
and, like,
me
she's
of?
Valg.
Even completely, like... I don't know why, and I've referenced this movie a lot, but I'm going to reference it again. Stardust, if no one has seen it, based on Neil Gaiman's book of the same name.
Yeah.
There's a great scene where Michelle Pfeiffer, as, like, the main villain, she is a witch, and she's pitting her powers against another witch, and it's sort of the same thing. Like, this other witch has, like, reddish powers, and Michelle Pfeiffer has just black powers, and they're like just like slamming their powers against each other, and it's just really cool looking.
Yeah.
So the scene, that bit just reminded me of it a little bit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So as it all explodes, Lorcan takes the opportunity to cut the guard's neck who's holding a lead and like throw knives in the faces of the other two guards, so they're all dead. And then he grabs a lead and calls her a stupid fool. And then immediately Maeve just tells him to hold on to her, and he has to. And I'm like, you should have just let her run to Manon. She'd be free now, but now you're the one that is holding her captive. Like, this is dumb. You're an idiot too. And Maeve tells him not to get any stupid ideas about fleeing with her, and then the fight continues, and Lorcan does tell her to, like, push him and run to, like, work around the command, but Aelin says, like, she can't leave. Aelin is doing so much for them. Like, she can't bear to just, like, leave her.
Yeah.
Aelin's obviously not doing so hot because she's burnt out, and Maeve, like, hits her and gets her down, and she screams and she tries to stand, but then a black whip thrashes her throat, and Maeve asks why she doesn't use the keys, and Aelin yells begging her to use the keys too, and Aelin is just like being attacked and screaming in unimaginable agony but doesn't use the keys. So
I think we can safely assume she probably doesn't have them.
You can't really. She had them a second ago.
That's true.
So, why isn't she using them? And then there's a growl, and a wolf and a lion appear, and then they obviously shift into Fenris and Gavriel. And Fenris tells Maeve to let her go, and Maeve calls them traitors for not killing Lorcan, and also for delaying getting here, because, like, they left to come here ages ago if Lorcan made it before them.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They really delayed it.
Yeah. They tried to help as best they could.
Yeah. And Maeve also calls Fenris a traitor for, like, pining after Aelin. And, like, I think it's more in the, like, ruler kind of way.
Yeah. He doesn't love her in that way, but he admires what type of a ruler she is, and if he had had his own choice, she's the type of person he would have sworn himself to, not Maeve.
Yeah. So Gavriel pleads with her then, and she says that he spent too much time with his unchecked bastard, and Gavriel just says to leave him out of it. And Aelin notices, like, there's no sounds of battle anymore, so it must be over. And she's like, I don't know if that's good or bad. The blackness kind of parts, and Aelin mouths at Aelin to run, but she can't. And she just, like, starts begging Manon and Lorcan again to do something. And Maeve says then that she has no quarrel with Manon, and Manon is free to go. So Manon's like, yeah, perfect, good with me. I'll just stand here and watch, and I'll leave after.
Yeah.
And Gavriel asks Maeve to leave Aelin to the war here, and that they can go home. And Maeve is just like, where's your home? Like, is Dornell actually your home anymore? And he says it is, and she says that they have to be punished for failing to kill Lorcan. And he agrees with that, and he also asks to take Aelin's punishment too. And then Aelin mouths no at that too, but she can't speak.
But can I just say that was a stupid thing to do? Because if you're offering to take Aelin's punishment, it's proving that she means something to him.
Mm-hmm.
And showing Maeve that, like, his loyalty doesn't actually lie with her. So, like, it was dumb.
Yep.
But
I agree.
You know, do what you do.
Yeah, I don't think there was any winning here, but still, it was, like, you're just going to piss her off more by saying that.
Yeah.
But, and that's what happens. Maeve says if he's so invested, he should join her court, and then she severs the blood oath without honor or good faith. And Fenris is just like, you bitch, because he's pissed that she didn't sever his. And then I guess we've only seen somebody honorably
discharged.
Yeah, of the blood oath. So with this one, like, he starts bleeding and she starts bleeding to, like, I guess symbolize, like, he drank her blood, so it's coming back out. And he's, like, I don't know if we get it right now, but he ends up, like, mortally almost wounded because of this, which I guess isn't surprising.
I also think that she wasn't gentle in how she severed it, right? Like, she could have severed it more gently than she did, but she chose to do it brutally, like, on purpose because she was pissed.
Yeah. And she says, like, now the world will know that he left his queen for another. And Maeve then tells Fenris that his punishment is going to be that he'll have to serve her forever when that's not what he wants. Because, like, Gavriel still wanted to be honorable. Like, he would have stayed with Maeve because that's, like, his main...
And he still thought it was honorable to serve her. Like, he wasn't unhappy with her.
Yeah. So, yeah. They both got the worst punishments they could imagine. Maybe not imagine, but... in this situation. Then invisible hands remove all of Aelin's weapons and, like, cut her as they all come out. And she's got, like, a bajillion weapons on every part of her, so it's not great. Aelin asks why, then. And we kind of get the full story from Maeve. So Maeve says she can't let her sacrifice herself for the lock. And we're like, oh, interesting. Maeve knows about that. But then we get... some of the past. So Brandon stole the keys from Maeve, which we already knew, and he knew that she'd be hesitant with the fire magic in the family to, like, go after them. And he thought that that would be enough to, like, protect the keys from her. But Maeve glimpsed the future that Aelin would bring her the keys. And she says she saw Aelin and she saw her mate, and they would be a powerful couple, and their children could have ruled the world. And she didn't know when Aelin would be born, but when Prince Rowan became of age and was the strongest male in her realm, she knew what she had to do to leash Aelin. So she tricked Rowan into thinking that Lyria was his mate, let him fall in love, get her pregnant, and then she broke him. She's the one that sent the soldiers to his house to kill Lyria, which is obviously awful. Yeah. Obviously the whole thing is awful. Like, Rowan even said to Aelin and Air of Fire that Lyria was afraid of him. Yeah. So, like, it's all not good. So then Rowan was broken, and he easily took the blood oath without actually caring. Obviously, Maeve wanted Aelin's mother to bring Aelin to meet Maeve, but also she would have met Rowan at the time. So that was her main plan, and that's why she didn't help fight when Aderlin. That was her big reason for not fighting, because her mother didn't keep her promise. So yeah, she knew Aelin would give her anything for Rowan, and, like, she literally almost did in Dornell. And Aelin says that she will kill Maeve, and Maeve is like, funny, that's the first thing you ever said to Rowan too. Like, it's true. And she says that Aelin came to her anyway, and that Aelin and Rowan were both so broken and hated each other, and they couldn't see that they were mates. And then when the Caranon bond, like, developed, Rowan was like, oh, that's all this is. Like, this can't be my mate. It's just this bond. That's fine. But Aelin has known since Tennis's temple, when the arrow went through his shoulder. But she hid it from him because she didn't want him to, like, feel any guilt about having him, thinking he had a mate before and all of that. And obviously she didn't really understand the whole depth of it. Like, she didn't know that Maeve tricked him into thinking it was his mate. She thought that, like, it actually was his mate, and she's like, I don't understand.
Right. Thought maybe, like, it was second mates or, like, something like that.
Maeve says, like, she wanted him to be here for this too, but obviously he's not. And she says that she let them go back in Dornell so that they would go get the keys for her. And obviously Aelin has two now, so, like, it's not a terrible plan. Terrible.
New word.
Two. Yep. And then she says the thing that breaks all of our hearts, which is Aelin is about 5 years from settling, and she and Rowan would have thousands of years or more together. Everything breaks our heart in this part, but that also broke our heart.
Well, because, like, Aelin is, like, literally she was about to sacrifice herself for the greater good.
The law.
And, like, hearing that, hey, the greatest love you've ever known, you would have had so long with them. Especially when they was so uncertain. And, like, Fenris was teasing them all the time about how, about him being...
She might never.
Yeah, about how she could die as immortal. So, it's just heartbreaking.
Which, like, even if she did, I'm sure that Rowan would have just done what Gavin did.
Yeah.
But still, yeah. Ugh. So...
I hate it.
Me too. It's too sad. Get it away from me. So Maeve then says that she's going to give Aelin a choice. She can either leave willingly without, like, trying to kill herself on the way, or they'll take her anyway, and they'll take a lead too. And then Maeve calls for Cairn, and we're still in Elid's point of view, and she can, like, tell by his face that he's a sadist.
Well, she spent time in Morath, so she knows the look very well.
Yes. And Maeve also says that Aelin can learn from Cairn's centuries of torturing because she's only had, like, a couple years in comparison to his centuries of learning. Yeah. And we're like, this is not good. Fenris starts to, like, beg Maeve not to. And, like, all of the Fae males are just kind of shook that she fucked over Rowan that bad. We go over to Aelin's point of view now, and everything hurts, and her magic is gone, and she can see that Manon is kind of looking for a way out, but she doesn't have any power left to, like, do a distraction. Yeah. Lorcan says no, obviously, to... Maeve asks what he's saying no to, and he says, like, Elid is innocent. He says, take the queen and go. And we're like, Jesus. Yeah. Lorcan.
Like, you heartless bastard.
Right? Manon says that Elid belongs to the Iron Teeth, so if she has no qualm with them, then there's none with Elid either. And Maeve commands Lorcan to stand down, not to move or to speak, and then she says, that applies to you too, Fenris. So now neither of them can do a goddamn thing. Elid begs Lorcan and Manon again to help out, to do anything, but neither of them can.
Can I just say that I'm a little, I agree with you. Elid is bothering me here. But, like, at the same time, I feel like somebody should have educated her on what this blood bond meant. Because she's, like, begging them to do something. It's like, bitch, did you not just hear Maeve? Like, he can do shit.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. She's like, maybe he can break it on his own.
Like, if he needs to pee, he's peeing his pants.
Yeah. I also think, like, I know there's nothing she can do either. But I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what else she could do. Anyway. Poor Elid. Bad situation.
Yeah.
Maeve sends then that she's going to wield the keys in one hand, and then she's going to wield Aelin Firebringer in the other. And you're like, does that mean she's going to get, like, a collar and a ring or something? Like, that's scary. Aelin knows, like, she'll need to break her first. And Aelin just, like, nods in agreement to, like, going easily so Elid doesn't have to go. So Maeve has Lorcan release Elid, and Aelin tells her to go with Manon, and she thinks to herself, like, she knows Elid is strong enough to have gone with her, but Terracine needs that strength if they are going to have a chance at surviving the war. She tells Elid to tell them that she's sorry, and to tell Lysandra to remember her promise, and she will never stop being grateful. To tell Aedion it's not his fault, and she wishes he was able to take the oath, and that the lines must not break, And then she sees that they're, like, pulling an iron coffin big enough for one person onto the beach, which is awful and terrifying and the worst thing I could ever think of. And then she says to tell Rowan that she's sorry she lied, but it was all borrowed time. And even before today, she knew. But she wishes they had more. And he has to fight and remember the vows he made her. And she said, tell him thank you for walking the dark path with her back to the light. It's so sad. So this is her, like, goodbye, and he's not even there.
No, and Aelin is gonna have to remember all this shit and tell everybody.
We're assuming Aelid's good at remembering because she can't read. So she's gonna know this word for word. So they open up the coffin and they start, like, pulling iron chains out in, like, a full-on iron mask that's apparently beautiful, but just sounds terrifying. And then Aelin tells Aelid that she's glad that they met, and she's proud of her, and her mother would be too. And then Maeve tells Aelin to bow, and she does. And then she bows lower, because she tells her to. And then she takes her shirt off, because Maeve tells her to. And 2 Fae males come over and hold her up. And then Maeve orders Cairn to whip her 10 times, and for Aelin to count. And she refuses to count. And they start again 9 times before she makes the first noise, which is a scream. And it's awful. It's so bad. Well, and she even thinks during it that, like, in Dovir whipping was bad, but here, like, he's a Fae male whipping her.
With the full force of his strength, too.
Yeah. Because, like, he's probably pissed at her that she won't...
count.
Yeah. It's so bad. One of the males holding her is just like, we should continue this later. And Cairn's like, no, there's still skin left. And then he says, well, others are approaching. So they're like, okay, fine. So Manon actually, like, full on knocks Aelid out because Aelid is, like,
freaking out,
overwhelmed. Yeah. Not surprising. But she, like, literally takes her, like, sword handle to her head and knocks her out. I'm like, she's just a human. You could easily kill her. Except for apparently she's an Iron Teeth witch, which, like, I just don't understand how you can have Iron Teeth blood and not be a witch.
I feel like it's so watered down. I feel like she's probably like 1/16 Iron Teeth witch.
I know, but an Iron Teeth witch and a human man produce an Iron Teeth witch.
That's actually a good point.
So how do you water it down? So yeah, she's got a lead over her shoulder and she just says good luck to Maeve and then just walks away. They drag Aelin to the iron box and she knows that Maeve won't let her die. And she just thinks that she's grateful that Jesus Christ. Yeah, so she says, or she thinks that she's grateful that Elena gave her time and that she found Rowan. And then the iron mask goes over her face.
Ugh.
Which is awful.
I hate it so much.
It's so bad. We go over to Manon's point of view now, and she just walks. And she doesn't give any indication that Aelin gave her the keys. The first time I read it, I was like, oh shit, I didn't even really think about the keys. I was just like panicked over Aelin. I didn't even care where the keys were. I was just like, why are you hurting her? Don't put her in the box. Manon thinks like she knows that Aelid will hate her for this. And Aelid actually starts to come to, but they're far enough away that like no one can hear them. So they just like crouch down and watch what's happening.
Yeah, so Manon literally was like in her head thinking like, I can't do anything because I don't want to alert Maeve that I have the keys instead of Aelin. Because like Maeve thinks she's not only taking Aelin but also the keys. Mm-hmm. And like she's gonna be very disappointed.
I just can't imagine not
checking. Yeah, I know.
But
I guess she was so like caught up in like the excitement of finally catching her nemesis, I guess.
Yeah, and Lorcan did say, like, she has 2 of the keys, so she probably just assumed that he was correct, because she did up until a few seconds ago. And she would obviously never give them to anyone else to hold on to. So,
But,
yeah.
like, side note, I don't remember Aelin being pissed at Manon.
I don't think she is.
At all. Which seems...
I don't think she ever is.
Which seems annoying to me.
Yeah, it's very hypocritical.
Yes. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
Because she doesn't understand blood oaths. But, okay. So, yeah, they, like, crouch down to watch, and Manon is just like, shh. So they can see, like, Gavriel is, like, mortally wounded, and Fenris and Lorcan are still frozen, and clearly they're both fighting the blood oath, but, like, obviously can't do anything. Aelin is being chained with iron on her arms and legs and her neck, and then has to lie on her destroyed back in this coffin. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. And then they close the lid, which is terrifying. And Aelin vomits. And then they take the box to the boat, and Maeve tells Fenris to go, and he just, like, gets up and winnows to the ship. And then she goes over to Lorcan, and she asks if he did this all for her, and he says yes. And Maeve says, which, like, I don't disagree with this part, but Maeve says she has no use for self-righteous males who think they know what's best for her.
And as terrible as Maeve is at this point, I sort of want to go, yes, queen! We don't need a man deciding what they think is best for us. We can decide ourselves.
Exactly. I was like, oh, I agree with her. And then she strips him of his blood oath, dishonorably as well. And she bans him from Doranel and says if he ever comes back, he'll die. And they both bleed. And then she starts walking away, and he starts crawling after her. And we're like, eee. Manon then says that they need to go. But then she hears Abraxos, and she feels joy, which is something she didn't think she could feel. But then she also looks at the coffin, and she prays that Aelin isn't awake for it. And she prays that Aelin lives through this so that she can die to save them all. And you're like, yeah, I get it, but it's also, fuck's sake. It's terrible.
Yeah, because she's not once thinking, maybe Dorian can take her place.
Not even a little bit.
It's like, oh, I hope Aelin lives through this torture so that then she can die, and not, hey, maybe she's given enough at this point. And maybe it's time for Dorian, who has lived in a fucking glass castle his whole life, given everything on a silver platter, maybe it's time for him to give a little bit.
Nope.
Ugh.
Not even a possibility in her brain.
I hate it.
Me too. So we go to Lorcan's point of view now, and there's so much blood. Obviously Aelin's, and he hears a lead say that the ship vanished. And then I've read this like multiple times because I'm pretty sure then she like whoops and says that Maeve didn't realize that they have the key, the ... She doesn't finish the word, but
that doesn't seem like an Aelin thing to do.
It does not.
Huh.
But I like read it twice because he was like, he hears Leed's voice say, the boat disappeared. And then he hears feminine whoops.
Huh.
And then he hears she didn't realize about the keys. So maybe it changed to Manon's voice, but they didn't specify. And it just seemed weird to me. Anyway, maybe Manon says it. But anyway, they don't say the word keys. But then Rowan's dagger is at Lorcan's throat. And he's asking where Aelin is. And we're like, fucking seconds too late here. Rowan is panicking. He obviously sees the blood and her shirt, and he asks where she is again. And his knife is like cutting into Lorcan's throat. And then Rowan asks, where is my wife? Not good. And at that, Lorcan actually starts to cry.
Lorcan has literally come out on top of this mess. The woman he loves is safe. He's free from Maeve's tyranny, which he low-key wanted anyway because he wanted to be with the lead. And he called Aelin the fire-breathing bitch queen. She's out of his life.
Yeah.
What does he care? Why is he crying?
I don't know. Rowan is, like, digging the knife deeper, and Lorcan thinks he thinks what that woman had done. Like, she knew he summoned Maeve, so she married Rowan to give Terrasen a king, and he didn't help her, and she ended up saving Aelid's life. So he's kind of coming to the realization of, oh shit.
He was a dumbass.
Yeah. And he thinks, like, she bowed to Maeve and was whipped so that Aelid wouldn't be. Because, like, when Maeve went to whip Aelin, she was like, or I could whip Aelid. Yeah. So, you know. And he thinks, like, he was so wrong. And then Manon tells Rowan that Maeve took her. And Gavriel says they were all commanded to not do anything with the Blood Oath. And Aedion asks where the ship went, and Aelid said it vanished. And Lorcan says he's sorry to Rowan.
Because that makes up for it.
And Rowan just lets him go. And, like, Lorcan is just, I guess, looking around. And Dorian is healing Gavriel. But Lorcan knows it won't heal the wound from, like, the blood out actually breaking. That is, like, in their souls. Yeah. Like, it's a soul wound. Manon comes over with her witches, and she explains the lock and everything about the mirror. And then what the cost is, Aelin dying. Or Dorian. She mentions that too, but kind of. And then Aelid kind of explains what happened here, and she's leaning on Lysandra while she's telling all this. And saying, like, everything Maeve did. Yeah. And changing their entire lives and fucking up Rowan's life and all that shit. Aedion then turns on Lysandra and is like, you knew. Because I guess he realized, based on what Aelid said to Lysandra, that Lysandra knew that Aelin knew she had to die.
Yeah, something about like Aelid telling Lysandra, like, remember, Aelin asked you to remember your promise or something like that. And that sort of got more into what the promise was, I guess.
They don't even really get into the promise. He's just like, Lysandra, you knew that she was going to do. Yeah. And she just says that Aelin asked her to help, and he asks what she can even do, because he's a dick. And Rowan is just like, he kind of realizes it. He didn't know it before now, but he realizes that Aelin would lock the keys, and Lysandra would pretend to be her for the rest of her life. And would have to have children with Aedion to, like, continue the line. And, like, Rowan just pieces all of this together because he's a smart dude. And Aedion asks when they plan to tell him, or if he would, like, think he was sleeping with his cousin. And Lysandra just says, like, she refuses to apologize to him. And she says she served her, and she will pretend to be her so that her sacrifice isn't in vain. And Aedion calls her a lying bitch, and then she growls at him.
Like, I understand it's a tense moment for everybody involved. Like, Aelin was just captured, and then they found out that she has to sacrifice her life anyway. But, like, Aedion, again, this whole book has been a little bitch. And this is just a continuation of that. Like, all he's doing is complaining when, like, if Aelin came to him and said, like, as your queen, I need you to keep this secret. Like, would he not? Would he go behind Aelin's back and tell Lysandra because they sort of have a will they or won't they thing going on? Like, he said that she is the one he's gonna end up with, like, forever, but, like, neither of them have made any moves whatsoever in the direction of romance.
No. I get, like, kind of like I think we said last week, she did promise to be honest.
But, like, I feel like in this context...
it doesn't count.
Well, that's it. In this context, their oath to their queen comes first.
Yeah. Which is exactly what she says to him. Anyway, we can't have happy relationships with another full book in the coming. It's exhausting. I can't.
No, their relationship in the next book, like their whole thing, really bothers me. Same. Now, like, do I think that he should have been brought in on this plan? Maybe, considering they want to use him as like a stud for his eyes.
Oh.
Maybe. But at the same time, that wasn't Lysandra's call. It was Aelin's call.
No. Yeah, he should be mad at her. And also, Aelin didn't plan for this to happen right now.
Yeah.
She didn't think that this was going to start right now. She thought that she'd have some time. She'd have to figure out the lock, get the third word key, before then she'd have to sacrifice herself, and that would happen. So, like, they had time to tell him. This is just happening much earlier than they wanted it to. They didn't tell Rowan.
Yeah. And he's fine.
Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, not good. And Alid goes over to Lorcan then and says that she hopes he lives his immortal, miserable life, suffering and alone with regret and guilt that he can never endure. Like, cool. So you're fine with Manon, but gotcha.
Now, I guess the fact that she knows now about the keys. Does she? Yes. She knows that Manon has the keys. So I guess she's making the inference.
That's why she,
So I guess, like, that's better. But, like, I don't... If you knew that somebody did something because they were concerned about your safety, would you be mad at them about it? Like, if something terrible happened?
I guess part of it is she feels guilty. Because if she wasn't there, Lorcan wouldn't have done it. And maybe that's part of it. But I don't think we ever get any of that in real life book. Like, we never get her feeling guilty for this. And, like, I don't think she should, but I can see where, like, if I were in that situation, I think I would feel guilty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's something.
Like, yeah, she's just directing every bit of anger she has at him. And as much as I understand, I also feel like maybe that's a bit short-sighted.
Yeah. But we can't have happy relationships going in with a full other book. We have to have everything blow up right here so that there's something to read for. Aedion then comes up to Lorcan and tells him that he's never going to forgive him. And then he walks over to Rowan, who is just, like, kneeling in the sand with Goldrin and just, like, sad. Yeah, broken is a better word.
So I'm assuming that Alid told him about everything about Lyria and everything, so he knows.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. We go over to Manon's point of view now, and she's just, like, overjoyed because the 13 are alive, and I can't really blame her for it. And she asks, like, how they found her, and they said that they've been searching for her for over a month, and then Abraxas found them, and they saved her ass. And then Manon thinks, not soon enough, because of Aelin. And, like, I kind of appreciate it, because, like, she could easily be like, yeah, my friends are back.
But I think she's also, like, she's grown close to these people. Like, you know, she's developed relationships with them, so it's nice.
I appreciate it.
She's growing as a character.
She is. So she asked them then if they heard what her grandmother said, and they say, yeah, they know that she's like... Yeah. And Astrid actually says that 5 centuries of pure blood Iron Teeth couldn't get them home, so maybe she can. And Manon asks if they will follow her, and they salute her. And she says then that, like, Aelin sacrificed so an Iron Teeth could walk free, i.e. a lead. So they owe her a life debt now. And her plan is to find the Krakens and raise an army for Aelin, her people, and their people. So we're hopefully getting another army. We go to Dorian's point of view now, and he's watching what everyone's doing, basically. And Manon comes over and tells him that Maeve doesn't have the 2 keys. She says that Aelin put them in Manon's pocket. And she says it's why she stayed neutral. And she says sorry to everybody. Which, like, I appreciate.
Everyone's like, yeah, okay. You're forgiven.
Well, yeah, right? She then gives the keys to Dorian and says that Mala's line is in both their houses. And it's just interesting because, like, before she was like, Aelin needs to come back, but now she's like, Dorian, you could also do this. Have 2 keys. Okay. And anyway, so he just says, like, the quest doesn't end here, and he thinks, like, he isn't frightened. So he's kind of like, okay, I'll sacrifice myself, thanks.
He, like, Aelin deserves to live. I'm sorry.
We go to Rowan's point of view now, and he thinks, like, they got married 2 days ago by the captain with Aedion and Lysandra as witnesses, and they only had 15 minutes to consummate the marriage. He then thinks, like, he knew that she was his mate, but he turned away from it for Ilaria. But in Skull's Bay, like, deep inside, he knew it, and then it was proved to him when she didn't kill him.
During sex.
And he still...
Or no, when Deanna...
When she was possessed by Deanna, yeah. And he still turned away from it, and now his friar heart is tortured in the dark, and she doesn't think that they're going to come for her. And he's just, like, so sad. He thinks to himself that he refuses to accept it, and he isn't accepting, like, Maeve taking her, and he's not accepting Aelin or Dorian's fate of, like, sacrificing themselves. He's like, neither of these things are going to happen. Even though she's already gone. But Lorcan comes over to him, and he just debates just immediately killing him then and there. And he's like, Lorcan wouldn't really even put up much of a fight. But he doesn't. And Rowan reaches down the mating bond, which he thought was the Karanom bond. I'm like, fine.
Sure, guys.
And he tells her to fight it, and that he's coming for her, even if it takes 1,000 years, he will find her. And he just says, I will find you, I will find you, I will find you.
This, like, you're literally, when you're reading the book itself, you are just openly sobbing at this point.
Yes. So much so. Boats start approaching then, and it's Ansel's men, Rolf's men, and his cousins' fighters. And then another new boat is coming towards them on a magic wind. And then a man gets off of it and comes towards them and asks for Aelin Galathinius, and Rowan asks who he is. And Aedion says Galen, and then Rowan puts together Galen Ashriver, the crown prince of Wendelin. And Galen is surprised to see Aedion, and he asks where she is again. And Aedion asks why he's here, and he says that he thought that she would have, like, informed them all. And he gives Rowan her letter, and it says, Terrason remembers Evelyn Ashriver, do you? I fought at Mistward for your people, return the god's damn favor. And then there are coordinates for them to find this place that they're in.
So when did she send that letter, though? For coordinates for that exact beach?
I guess when she sent, after she went to the temple and was told she had to find the lock, she sent...
How the hell did she know she was going to end up there at that exact time?
I don't think she knew the time. I think she would have just waited for them. Because they did stay there like an extra day or so, or 2 days or something. But still, it's... And also, showing up right after all the fighting is...
Convenient.
Something. And then Lysandra kind of warns them of a group of people dressed all in white approaching, and Rowan immediately knows that it's the Silent Assassins, and Ansel kind of confirms it by saying Ilias, and he just stiffens because obviously they have some beef.
Little bit.
So, yeah, you'd think that there'd be more to that, but I don't really think that comes up much either in the next book. And Ilias basically says that they've come to fulfill a life debt to Selena/Aelin, and they ask where she is. And then, like, hundreds of assassins start showing up behind him, and Galen's ships start coming, like, bunch after bunch over the horizon. So, like, wild. Aedion falls to his knees because he's like, shit. And Rowan thinks of Aelin's promise to Darrow in this book? Was that all in this book? Jesus Christ. Yeah. so 9 weeks ago, that she was going to call in debts and promises to get an army of assassins and thieves, exiles and commoners. And Aedion, like, starts crying, and Rowan thinks of him asking where their allies are, and knows that Aelin didn't want to disappoint them if no one came, and that, like, everything she's done is for Terrasen. And he thinks she raised an army not just to challenge Morath, but to rattle the stars.
Can I just say, here's what I don't understand. And, like, I get that Erewhon has keys and has been, like, impregnating witches to make crazy creature babies, and, like, he's been torturing humans to morph them into these crazy creatures. But I don't understand how, numbers-wise, literally, the Silent Assassins are in the hundreds. Wendelin must be in the thousands for them to have literally ship after ship on the horizon. You can see nothing but ships. They have Melisandre's armada. They have the Wastes army. Like, then, not to mention the Bane and Terrasen's army when they get to Terrasen. Plus, if the Kagan shows up, all of their people. I don't understand how that's, like, how they're, like, not guaranteed a win. Because it's, like, Morath is just Aderlin.
Yeah, well, it's Aderlin, all the Iron Teeth witches and their wyverns.
Still.
There's a lot of them. And then there's, like, all the creature-y bullshit that they made. They just sent a shit ton of Vilken that are just, like...
I guess.
Tortured people. So, like, I don't know how we can have hope, because we don't know what Morath has. Like, I don't know how you can think that they do well or not against Morath. It just seems
like it's the entire world against one country's worth of... Because, like, even if they did take people and turn them into these creatures, they still needed a supply of people that they got from Aderlin.
Yeah.
And Eelway, I guess.
Well, yeah, and also Terrasen and all these other places, like, all the other conquered places. Because most of the places are conquered, so, like, even Terrasen, like, the Bane is there, but I don't think they really have an army anymore. I think they've all been defeated. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like a lot. Yeah. So, and then he thinks that if Chaol and Nesryn are able to get an army from the southern continent, they'll really have a chance. I guess the other thing is, like, he has a key, but, like, she has two keys. So, but we don't know what the keys do. Like, I don't know if we ever really get what the keys do, other than, like, you can apparently jump over lava at a temple, and she can let Deanna into her body because she was wearing it. I don't really understand what they do. Like, when you get them all, you can open a gate to another world, but I don't know. Anyway. So Lysandra as Aelin then pops up and greets Galen and then Ilias, and Aedion is, like, pissed and about to, like, blow her cover, but Rowan's like, fuck off. And holds him back. And, like, he notices that Lysandra even has Aelin's smile down pat. Like, she's been practicing. And then Galen asks where they're going now, and Lysandra says north to Terrasen, but she turns to Rowan and tells him to find something for her first before he comes back. And then she asks Galen and Ilias to speak with her and, like, the rest of the army, and they kind of, like, go over to them and leave our main crowd to chat amongst themselves. Lorcan, Gavriel, and Elide say that they'll go with Rowan to find Aelin. And Rowan turns to Aedion, and he says he'll go north. Aedion says he'll go north with her. Like, he doesn't even want to say Lysandra's name. He's, like, so fucking pissed. And he says the lines need to hold, and they need time. So, like, Rowan's basically like, can you hold off and give us as much time as possible so that Morath doesn't realize that Aelin's not around? And Aedion says, bring her home, Prince. Dorian comes over and he says he'll go north with the witches to see if he can do what needs to be done, i.e. get the third word key. And Rowan asks him to stay, but he says that they'll find another way to deal with the keys in the lock, because like that's Rowan's big plan, is like they can figure something else out. But Dorian kind of says like the keys need to stay away from Maeve, so he's obviously not going to go with them to try to find Aelin. Aedion is just like, you're gonna die if you go to Morath. But Manon just says not if she can help it. And then Dorian like bows to Rowan, king to king. But Rowan kind of wants to say he's just a consort. He's not actually a king. He's so cute. And then Dorian goes over to Manon and he says like he's going to rally to Crockett's with her. And he'll meet them in Terrasen. So there's something left to save. And Rowan asks Dorian if he actually trusts the witches. And he says yes, and that 2 wyverns are actually going to stay with the 4 of them until they get to the edge of the continent. Aedion just, like, walks past Aelin Lysandra and just completely ignores her and goes to one of the boats. And Rowan's just, like, doesn't even really want to think about the implications of their plan for him. Because, like, obviously part of the plan is for him to go back and just leave her in this coffin forever. Like, that's what she not what she wants, but that's what her plan was. In the moment when she said, tell him to remember his vows and this, that, and that.
But, like, also think of the implications, too. Like, the implications that, like... This is what I don't understand right now is... So, like, everybody has been told that, like, Aelin and Rowan are together. So, like, what do Galen and, like, the Silent Assassins and everybody else... of them, what does everyone think of them not traveling together at the moment? Like,
well, Lysandra Aelin just said, you need to go find me something before you come meet us in the north. So, like, I guess. Like, I guess they can believe he's on an important mission to get something. I don't know.
And then, like, on top of that, too, so, like, the plan is for Rowan to, like, live like he's married to Lysandra Aelin. So, like, that means he's gonna have to, like, sit next to her and, like, show her affection in public. You know, like...
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. It's a lot. I guess one thing is, like, it seems like in this time, maybe there's not as much PDA. I don't know. Astrid and Briar are going to fly, I guess, Lorcan, Alid, and Gavriel. And Alid basically snubs Lorcan, and he's hurt. And Rowan can see the hurt in his eyes.
I think, like, he's gonna, like, try and help her, like, onto a wyvern or something, and she, like, takes Astrid's help instead.
Because Astrid's on the wyvern, like, it makes more sense. So then they, like, take off, and Rowan straps Goldrin on his belt, and then he grabs Aelin's shirt, and he smells her scent, and he feels a flicker in the bond, and he lets, like, her shirt go out to sea, and he says, I will find you. And then he shifts to fly to, like, the wyverns, and then, unleashing a cry that set the world trembling, Prince Rowan Whitethorn Galathinius, consort to the Queen of Terrasen, began the hunt to find his wife.
Ugh.
And that's the end of the fucking book.
Yeah. So,
and then we had to wait a bajillion years.
So can you imagine this as a cliffhanger, and then waiting a whole year only for fucking Chaol's story, and then having to wait an additional year? So, like, we were left on that cliffhanger for a whole fucking year. It was brutal.
Possibly 2. I'd have to actually look up when.
No, it was like 2 years.
Yeah,
what
2
years.
What did I say? A whole year.
2 whole fucking years.
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah, we were 2 years on that, on, like, Aelin in this iron coffin being tortured, about to be tortured by Maeve. And then we get freaking Chaol, and we get nothing from Aelin. And it's devastating.
Well, we get one thing at the end of the book. And
it
it's
is worse than you could ever
we got
imagine.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I would have rathered nothing. Thanks.
Anyway. So, I guess after that, like, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, worst thing imaginable, we go over to fucking Chaol, who is spending the morning with Yrene in bed, lounging and eating naked.
I guess we can't really blame...
I can and I will.
the way that the book is... the way the tandem read is done out for how pissed we are here. But I get it.
Anyway, they're stuck waiting for Hafiza to decide whether to, like, help them out or not and, like, share information with them. And they're waiting for Nesryn to come back. So they're just, like, stuck, like, having sex all the time and eating like kings and queens and being waited on hand and foot.
Awful.
God, fucking Chaol. So apparently he told, Chaol told Yrene the night before about, like, the whole Selena, Aelin, who she really was, and their whole history. Like, he literally told her he literally did a plot synopsis of Throne of Glass all the way to now.
Yeah.
And, like, about Dorian and the Valg Collar and what he did and didn't do and everything. And Yrene thought, and this bothered me, that if she didn't love him already, she would have fallen in love with him then, seeing the man he had become after all he had endured. I'm like, what the fuck?
Fine.
Whatever. Yrene, I guess, like, whatever floats your boat. But, like, really? Ugh. Yeah. So, like, abandoning Aelin after finding out she was Fae, that's sexy to you?
Apparently.
Wow. Great. Anyway.
You have a lot of security in your relationship after hearing that he found out someone was Fae and lost his fucking shit, and you have magic? Okay.
Or the fact that Nehemia died because he wanted to prove that he was still loyal to his kingdom, even though it was a terrible guy. But you wanted to prove that Aelin didn't hold you by the balls, so you didn't tell her about something? Yeah. Of course, that would make me love you so much.
Yep.
Anyway. Yrene asked him what happened to the king, because I guess, like, it's still the real story of what happened, of how the king died, the king of Aderlan died, is still not publicized. And Chaol had to explain that Aelin and Dorian actually healed him with fire. So then he explained everything, like, he says the king explained all the shit he did, like building the towers and finding the key and all that. But then he faded away, aka Dorian killed him. So he didn't fade away at all. Yeah. Dorian just killed him. Let's call it what it is. And Yrene was surprised to hear that fire purged the Valg from the king's body, and tells Chaol that her theory is that the Valg is a parasite / infection. And I'm like, I thought we already knew the Valg was like a parasite. Like, just from observation. But, yeah. Okay, whatever, you do you. And she explains that, like, when she first arrived at the southern continent, her and Hafiza went on a job, and we learned about this near the beginning of the book when she was telling us about the first time she met Hasar, and how Hafiza had to pull a tapeworm from Hasar. And she thinks the Valg are the same, that they feed off the host until there's nothing left. But I don't understand that, because even when there's nothing left, they stay in the host body, and then they claimed it.
Well, and also, we got last week that the Fae were worried that they would take over their dead bodies, so, like, they don't even need to feed.
So, a little bit unsure of what that's about, but... Yeah. So that's what she wanted to see with him yesterday, is, like, how much awareness the darkness had. And then she said that she realized that her hatred, anger, and fear were her own parasites, feeding on her throughout the years. And that she had to understand what was inside her, and that facing something and enduring something is different. So, like, essentially, facing something and overcoming it is different than enduring it. They're two different things. So she decided to like swarm it with her magic the way she would any parasite. So her like thought process was she made the darkness attack Chaol to get away from her. Like she would swarm it so much that it would attack Chaol to try and like distract her, I guess, or distract Chaol. But she wanted it to attack Chaol so that Chaol could finally face it and defeat it himself and decide whether or not he was ready to fight back. So essentially, this is just like a metaphor for inner demons.
Yeah.
And she's trying to say that, like, okay, Chaol did all the work. He had to fight it himself. So, yeah. I'm just so done with how much credit she gives him.
Yeah. Same.
So, she also explains to him then that fire is purifying, but it's not often used in the healing arts. That's more water. Like, water's more common. And then there are some people that have raw healing magic like her. Like, she doesn't have an element. She's just a healer. And Yrene then suggested that someone who also was trained like she was could potentially heal the infected Valg, which we sort of alluded to last week. And that the collars and rings are sort of just like contaminated water. They carry the demon into the host, which allows them to grow. But Yrene can free them with her magic. But then they said they would need Aelin or Dorian to hold them down so they could get close, which I don't understand.
I guess they just need to incapacitate them somehow because she can't actually fight them. She can
why
just
Aelin or Dorian? Why not literally any other strong person with magic?
I guess they don't know any other strong people
and like
with magic.
Why do they have to have magic? Why can't Chaol do it? He's a strong guy.
Don't know. Well, I guess the thing, if Chaol tried to do it, then it would just like feed on his darkness and shit. Like when it attacked Aelin in Air of Fire, when they attacked her, like they all fed on her, and then she lived all of her worst memories. So like, I guess a human can't.
Oh, but really the fact that she's already faced it means she could. And I guess Dorian has too.
I don't know.
Ugh. Anyway. Chaol then tells Yrene about Athral's ring and how badly Maeve wanted it, like enough to trade Rowan for it, the ring that Elide now wears. And then they make some more leaps that, according to history, Mala forged Athral's ring, which I didn't realize we knew. So I don't know how they know it, but sure. But then they're like, that's weird, because Mala was in love with Brannon. But again, how did they know that? Because nobody knew Mala was Elena's mother. Remember, like, about halfway through?
Yeah,
when they were all like, who was your mom anyway? And Elena was like, it was Mala. Yeah, exactly. And everyone's like, oh my god. So, like, how did they know? How does Chaol and Yrene know that Mala loved Brannon?
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. So, like, how do they know if no one knew that Mala was Elena's mother? And then Chaol, like, this is literally so bad. He remembers that the tapestry in Aelin's room at the glass castle that led them to the first word key had an owl on it. It was a forest scene, so there were lots of animals, but there was an owl. Okay. And apparently an owl is Astral's animal form, which I also didn't know we heard before, but they know.
Okay.
And that maybe Athral's animal form is an owl because of his loyalty to Silba. Because we know that Silba, who is the goddess of healing, her symbol is an owl. So maybe Silba forged the ring, not Mala.
Okay.
But at the same time, I don't understand what difference that makes.
No.
Like, Athral is dead long ago. They already know what the ring does. So who the fuck cares which goddess made it?
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
I don't know why it matters.
So, for some reason, this tidbit of information means we have to get up and get dressed and go see Hafiza immediately. But I don't understand. But before they can even move off the couch, Hasar breezes into the room. And, like, they're still, I don't know if they're completely naked, but they are scantily clothed. It just says they're not wearing clothes. So, like, I'm assuming.
Sounds naked to me.
But, like, I don't know if they're wearing underclothes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they're wearing underwear and stuff. Yeah. Or if she's wearing, like, a shift. And, I mean, obviously, like, she's like, well, I see you guys are, like, not wasting any time or, like, having a good day or something. But she tells them that they have finally heard from the north that Maeve's armada managed to find Aelin's fleet, and there was a huge battle. And so this is, like, us hearing about the final scene in Empire of Storms. That we just finished. So Chaol's, like, really stressed, but then Hasar tells them that Aelin won, which, like, calms him down again. But then she tells them all of the details of each armada, how the White Thorn ships turned on Maeve, and then the Wyverns came to help, so, like, they have all the details. And she even knows that there was a battle of Flame and Shadow on the shoreline, and that Aelin was seen leaving with her ships sailing north, and Maeve hasn't been seen since.
Flame and Shadow was...
Oh my god!
Interesting.
You guys, that's the name of the Third Crescent City book. All the connections. So many connections. Anyway, Hasar even, like, suggested that maybe Maeve would come here to the southern continent to lick her wounds, which is stupid.
I also don't understand, like, that's not a good thing.
Why would you want that?
You don't want that. I'll tell you right now. You do not.
And then she tells Chaol and Yrene that Aelin has armadas from the Silent Assassins, Wendelin, and that quite a few people apparently believe in what she's selling. And then she reveals that Aelin actually wrote her a note from one princess to another a week ago. And Chaol's sort of like, well, what did she promise you, like, if you helped? And she said, a better world. Sort of, and it sort of shows that, like, maybe Hasar is considering lending her forces to the war effort. So just after that, Chaol and Yrene head back to the tower to talk to Hafiza. Yrene thought, like, to herself as they were heading into the Torre that she was finally going home with Chaol, and, like, he was hers. And, like, she's very sort of overcome with emotion at the prospect of heading home with Chaol. And, like, leaving the Torre. So they make it to Hafiza's office, but it's empty. So Yrene goes to ask Aretia if she...
Don't remember.
If she knows where Hafiza is, and Aretia assumes she's in her office. She's like, Hasar, go in there and shut the door. And she hasn't come out since. So she's like, well, if she's not in there, she must have slipped past me. So then she asks a couple of other healers, and they all say the same thing, that Hafiza is in her office. But she's not, because Yrene checked. So then they go check the mess hall, since it's dinner time. And they pass Irene's bedroom door, and it was closed, which I guess is odd. And then she notices that there's something wedged underneath it. And they pull it out, and it's Hafiza's key. So they instantly know that something is wrong, because Hafiza wouldn't do that without a reason. So they need to notify the guards, but they don't want to, like, get a search party going, because that's going to take too long. And they don't want to alert everyone, because that's going to cause hysteria. Yrene just sort of wants to split up to search, but Chaol's like, no, we need to stick together. Whoever's behind this will assume that we'll split up, so we need to stay together. So they check the exits, and the guards assure them, like, no, Hafiza hasn't been by. So they're like, okay, she still has to be on the premises. And Yrene remembers that there are rumors of tunnels under the library that connect to the outside. And of course, what a great time to remember. So they go to the library and they ask Nusha about the tunnels, and she gives them directions. And Chaol then instructs her to go quietly to get the guards and send the guards after them down the tunnel. Like, they're gonna go first. They should have just waited for the guards. Because, like, they say in a few minutes that they know that Hafiza is the bait. So, like,
it's a trap for
they
them.
know it's a trap. Why not wait then for the guards to help you? But sure, whatever. Yeah. So they head all the way down to the basement of the library, and they find an open door they've gone, like, even deeper than the womb at this point. It's so deep underground. And then they see two sets of tracks, so they know that Hafiza is down here. So then we go to Chaol's point of view. He knows it's all a trap. Hafiza is the bait. So, like, again, just wait for the guards, because whoever took Hafiza is not going to do anything without you being there. What's the point then of bait? So it's just dumb. But his whole thing is, I don't want Hafiza to be injured, so I'm gonna go. We're gonna go anyway. And they continue going until they reach an empty chamber that's filled with gold and treasure, but also, like, really heavy stone sarcophagi. And they see there's, like, a raised dais. It's like a throne room almost. But they see Hafiza is bound and gagged, sitting on a golden throne. But next to her, they finally see who's been behind all the attacks all this time.
Murder mystery.
Holding a knife. It's dun-dun-dun, Duva, the pregnant, soft-hearted, soft-spoken younger sister. And they notice that her expression isn't human, but Valg at this point. So they realize that Duva was behind wrecking Chaol's room. Like, she stayed behind because of her pregnancy, so obviously she was the one behind it. They also realize that the Valg has a hold of a pregnant woman. So, like, they can't just kill her, because there's a baby to think of, people. So, Duva tells Chaol that, like, even though he's trying to figure the options out, she's gonna lay them out for him. He has to choose. Either her, like pregnant Duva, Hafiza, or Yrene. And then, we get our villain monologue. And, like, it's a pretty decent one, too. It's a chat, like, Valg is very chatty.
That's fair.
So, Duva, for lack of a better word, because our Valg doesn't have a name, essentially says that these tunnels run between the Torii and the palace. So that's how she's been able to, like, sneak in and sneak out, is by using these tunnels. Nobody remembers they exist.
Except for, what's-her-face, when
Nusha.
they asked her, was like, just go here and you'll find him. So, like, we should have checked these before now. Someone fucking died.
Anyway. She also says that, like, the immortal Fae buried their royals right here. Like, that's what all these sarcophagi are for. And that they are the renegades of Mora's noble line. And apparently the Kagan doesn't even know all the gold is here. Like, there's, like, this room full of gold, and nobody knows that no one knew it was there. And she sort of just says, like, of course no one realized that she would be the one who was the Valg, which is sort of why Parrington/Erewhon planted the ring for her in the first place. And he actually sent it over in the wedding gifts. And actually, Hasar saw it and wanted it, but Duva grabbed it first. And it's just a plain silver wedding band that she actually used as her wedding band. But they had made it so that the wordstone was hidden, like, under the top layer of silver. So, like, it was camouflaged.
So we'd never expect it.
So, like, she put that on her wedding day and was infected. which is like shitty. What a wedding. Then she admitted that Tumalin noticed Duva poking around in forgotten places, so she just shoved her off a balcony. So Duva killed Tumalin. However, the Valg did admit, and this is very important, it's going to come up later, that Duva inside, like locked in the consciousness, was screaming when Tumalin was pushed. But the Valg, like, shut her up by holding a knife to her belly, threatening the baby. So, like, I mean, it's a good way to keep someone compliant.
In line. Yeah.
And Yrene then asks why the Valg is even here. And it admits that it's here for Yrene because healers are important and can wipe them out. And I wrote in my notes, like, why Yrene specifically? And, like, why not the rest of the healers? But the question does get answered later, so I'm going to pretend I didn't write it.
But
yeah, still say it. But this was the question I was asking myself. Like, why is Yrene so special at this moment?
Yeah. So,
the Valg also admits the reason Maeve kept the healers close to her as, like, her own personal army. And the Fae who escaped didn't want to, like, who escaped to hear the Fae that, like, escaped to the southern continent and sort of, like, established their, I guess.
Powers? This place, I guess, technically they established this place.
Yeah, I feel like they did.
Yeah, that's what we kind of got last week.
And, seeped their magic into the earth and all that shit. They left because they didn't want to be penned up like animals by Maeve after the last war. So they came to the southern continent. And they bred their healing magic into the land and its people and encouraged the right powers to rise up. So I guess Maeve keeps healers close and creates armies of healers and sort of keeps them, like, right on top of her at all times. So, so these Fae that left, they did that to ensure that those Maeve did not consider important enough to protect a fighting chance in case Aelin returned. So essentially, these Fae created this society and created this, like, this population of healers so that humans and other unprotected classes of people would be protected from Aelin. Fuck what that did that good. Didn't do them any good.
No, it didn't.
When Aelin did return, he did remember what healers could do, so he purged them from the northern lands, aka Yrene's homeland, Fenharrow, but she escaped the quote-unquote butcher's block. So, like, this is sort of why we're getting that Parrington went around, well, I guess the King of Adelin went around killing healers. It's because Aelin knew what healers could do.
Yeah. And it's kind of what Chaol just guessed it one day and was like, that must be it. And we're like, how would you know that?
Yeah.
But okay.
Yrene then feels guilty that, like, she's the one who brought the Valg over here to the southern continent. But
I feel like they were like, we need it to not be Chaol's fault. So then they pinned it on her.
Irene's fault. So, like, Yrene feels guilty, but Chaol just feels, like, hopeful. Because, in his mind, hope is the most dangerous weapon against the darkness. And that's what the Fae people have done here, is they've created this, like, nation of potential of healers that could give them hope that they could actually win. So, Yrene then asks why the Valg doesn't just kill her. But it reveals that she's much more useful alive than dead.
I don't get why.
I think it's going to explain it a little bit.
I don't know. I just feel like, oh, I guess it's not really explain it, but, like, anyway, sorry.
No.
You can. I guess we'll get into it.
Yeah.
We'll get into it.
So then we go to Irene's point of view, and she tries to tell the Valg that, like, she's nobody. Like, why would Erewhon even want her alive? But the Valg tells her that, like, 2 years is too fast to ascend the Torre. So, like, she's literally done all of her schooling in 2 years. And that she is, in fact, Silba's heir. So, like, we get another magic-y link.
God, that... Silba's a god,
goddess,
right?
I think.
So Silba also took on a human form for a little bit and fucked someone?
I don't know. I guess that's what they've all done.
That's news. Yeah. Good to know.
The Valg also can't, like, I guess she's like, I don't remember who initiates the conversation, but in the discussion of, like, why not just attack the Torre and wipe everybody out like you did in Fenharrow? But they don't want to raise suspicion of why Erewhon would want to kill all the healers. And I guess blowing up, like, a tower of them, I guess, is too big of a hint.
Well, yeah, if she and Chaol can get it from nothing, then smarter people than them would get it from that.
And he just wants them to be a bit ignorant still. Until Erewhon comes to this continent. So, like, sort of confirming that, like, you thought we were going to stay in the north, we are not. As soon as we're done, we're going to come south. Which is sort of like Argan and Hussar, their whole argument. It's like, well, that's not anywhere near us, why should we care?
Yeah, but they're also like, well, maybe they'll kill each other and we won't have to worry about it.
Not happening.
No.
So he also then, or I say he also, but the Valg also tells them that the healer that they killed, that looks like Yrene, was simply wrong place, wrong time. Like, had nothing to do with the fact that she looked like Yrene. So that's great news. Yeah. And that the Valg is going to be bringing Yrene back to Morath, and that her healing, like, the fact that she could heal Chaol proved who she was. So, like, not just anybody can do that. And essentially Duva is, like, bragging and saying, like, that I'm going to kill Chaol, is what Duva is saying. I'm going to kill Chaol, and I'm going to use the fact that I'm a princess, Duva, when the guards get here, and I'll be like, oh no, I don't know what happened. And then Duva plans to pin it on Chaol.
Yeah.
So she's also says she plans on making Yrene put a ring on to, like, infect her.
Yes, this was the thing that I was like, oh yes, they are putting a ring on her, so she's not just going over able to fucking kill Erewhon. But if she can remove the parasite inside of somebody else with her magic, you think that she'd be able to take it out of herself with her magic.
You would think,
too.
But I think it would require a level of consciousness that might be not there.
Yeah.
And, like, if you don't have control of your body, how are you supposed to, heal yourself?
Yeah. We don't really know. Because, like, Kaltain eventually could, but she also, like, lost herself to it. So, and I assume that she was able to because of her fire magic.
Yes.
But, yeah.
So then she threatens Hafiza with a knife at her neck to make them do what she says. However, Hafiza, iconic legend that she is, hurls her body off the throne and down the stairs, banging into Duva, so they both tumble down the stairs. And, like, Yrene is obviously really worried about the baby because they hit the hard stone floor. And, like, Chaol decides he's finally going to jump in and help. But he doesn't go for Duva, he goes for Hafiza, which I think is the stupidest decision he could ever make.
Well, it just makes her, like, I'm going to say sacrifice her. It makes her move useless now. Like, what was the point of her doing that if they're not going to use the advantage?
Anyway, so once Yrene gets to Hafiza 2, they see she's alive, they help her up. And then Duva stands up. Because again, Chaol didn't go and, like, restrain her when he could. So Duva stands up, and apparently there's, like, splinters in her neck and, like, black blood coming out of her mouth, and her dress is, like, ripped very strategically at the belly, allowing her, like, belly to come out. And Chaol decides he's going to stand in front of Yrene, you know, be the gentleman. But he's also getting Hafiza to, like, stand behind them. And he's trying to tell them with his eyes to run. But obviously they don't. Because Yrene sees that what he's trying to say, but also knows that he's not going to hurt Duva because she's pregnant. So, like, really, all he's going to do is buy them some time.
Yeah.
So Duva starts attacking Chaol with her shadow music, and he keeps dodging it until he grabs, like, a mirror off the wall or something and holds it up. And she blasts him with her magic, which rebounds onto her. And she goes, like, flying into a sarcophagus. And then they hear a crack, and then she's on the floor unconscious.
Or we assume unconscious. But, like, I really thought that this magic buffer thing was going to do more than it ends up doing. I was like, oh, put their magic back on them. That'll fix it.
But it doesn't do much.
No.
So, Chaol, like, feels like shit. Because I think he thinks that, like, he's either killed Duva or, like, just really hurt her, which he said he didn't want to do.
Well, yeah, and, like, she is a princess. It would be very bad for their relations with the Kaken.
So, like, Chaol obviously feels like shit because he, like, because of that incident. But Yrene goes over to Duva thinking she can get the Valg out while she's unconscious. However, when she rolls Duva over, she isn't unconscious. And she goes full-on attack mode to Yrene. So, like, it was a bait and switch. Yeah. So, like, Chaol rushes in between him. And obviously, for some weird reason, he puts his back to Duva and looks in Irene's face. Which is also odd. Like, if you're going to step in between someone, are you going to put your back to the bad guy? I don't know if you'd ever do that.
You would not.
So, obviously, his back is towards Duva, and he's taking the full brunt of her attack, and it's the worst pain he's ever felt, and all of a sudden, like, he can't feel his legs anymore. So, like, Duva paralyzed him again, keeps sending power at him, and Yrene is, like, begging her to stop and starts crawling for Chaol's sword. And Chaol's just trying to, like, whisper at her to run, but she grabs the sword. And this part is weird. She throws it at Duva, I think, and then runs into the maze. And of course, like, Duva follows them. I don't even know whose point of view we're in, but now we're in Irene's. So, like, she realizes that, like, all the work for Chaol's spine is gone, and she's, like, and he's over there, like, running and dodging, trying to buy them time.
Well, he's not running.
Shit. No, sorry, my bad. She is sort of acknowledging that all of that work that they did for his spine is gone. And then she starts to, like, run around and, like, dodge the shadow fireballs, I guess is what I keep thinking in my head. She's trying to, like, run and dodge to buy them time. Because I guess she's thinking that, like, if the guards can get to them, then maybe they'll have help. I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But, like, Duva catches her and is so strong, and, like, she pins her with her arms around Irene's neck, sort of like a chokehold. But then, instead of just, like, killing her or putting her to sleep or doing something, she drags her back over to Chaol because she wants to see him. She's like, I guess Duva the Valg can't decide whether she wants Chaol to watch Yrene put the ring on or make Yrene watch the Valg kill Chaol. And it's like, ooh, choices.
This is your downfall. The villain's, like, ego.
Anyway, so Yrene, like, obviously doesn't want to watch that. So she uses the defense moves that Aelin taught her to get out of Duva's hold and breaks her nose. And then she...
Yeah, it all comes back to those defense moves.
And, like, I totally get why they had to include them, but I'm a little bit about it.
I get it.
So then she grabs Chaol's dagger, and she sits on Duva and positions the dagger over her throat. And she's like, I'm going to cut off her head, because that's what you have to do with Valg. You got to cut their heads off.
Yeah.
But, like, she's pissed because she can actually feel that Chaol is dying from the pain that was, like, thrown at him. And, like, she can sort of sense where all the, like, injuries are. And says that, like, Duva ripped something open inside of him. But, like, she's here holding a knife to Duva's throat, like, trying to convince herself to kill her. But she's like, she promised she would never take a life. So she doesn't want to take this life. And Chaol sort of says her name and, like, insinuates with his eyes, because, again, we love that. But, like, he tells her, like, he doesn't want her to kill Duva because it's not in her nature. And I don't know if people found that moment really sweet. I found it awful. Like, genuinely terrible. Because in my head, I'm like, he doesn't want her to kill someone because he had such a problem with it when Aelin did it. Like, any time she killed someone, he couldn't decide how to feel about it. He was mad at her for doing it, but then if she was like, I'm not actually doing it, he was mad at her because she didn't. And, like, the whole thing, like, it's one of the things that he could never get over was her life as an assassin and the fact that she killed people.
Yeah. I didn't really connect the two, but I like that you connected them because it really makes sense.
So, like, in my mind, he's not doing it for her so much, but it's more like, if she does this, his opinion of her will change. Yeah. So he doesn't want her to do that.
And I was more like, if she kills a princess, the Kagan is gonna fuck her up.
That too.
That's what I was thinking.
Even considered that.
But that was the only thing that like really went through my head about it. But yeah, I like your read on it a lot. And now that's why he chose a healer to love, because they have a vow not to take a life, so he's never gonna have to deal with that again. Yeah, love it.
Anyway, Yrene can, like, feel Chaol's death coming. Like, it's sort of part of her healing gift is she can feel when, like, a life is ending, but she also can't bear to end Duva's life or the baby's. And Hafiza finally, like, I don't know what she was doing this whole time, if she was, like, knocked out, but she finally comes over and sends Duva into a sleep. And I'm like, if Yrene is Silba's heir, why can't she do that?
Yeah. Is this just, like, a power that she has because she's, like, in the castle? Does she just have, like, something up her sleeve she pulls out to, like, knock someone out? Like, I don't get it.
Because, like, again, if she's the healer on high and Yrene is supposed to be her successor, even though we know that, like, she's not going to be her successor, but, like, if she was going to be the next healer on high, you would think she would also have an equal power, or at least know how to do it.
Yeah, you would teach her. Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly.
So, but then they see that Nezrin and Sartak have arrived. And they realize they arrived too late, because Chaol is dying. Duva's, like, unconscious. It's just a mess. So Yrene crawls over to Chaol's body and, like, orders him to wake up, but there are too many damaged and broken things. And she just tells him to fight and then says, please. So, like, do you think the please was aimed at...
At a god. At outside forces. Like, I think it definitely caught the attention of outside forces. But I don't know if that was her intention or not. But maybe. Maybe she was just pleading to anybody because she loves him so much.
So she sees a light start to, like, repair things and sees his chest move. And then she hears a voice that's sort of Hafiza's, but it's also different, telling her that there is, like, so much damage that there must be a cost if the damage is to be repaired. So she, like, feels all the lights around her are actually the different healers. And I guess, like, they sort of all have, like, a different glimmer to their magic. You know what I mean? It's like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
And she sort of tells that other voice that she will pay the cost. And the voice just sort of says that, like, she chose well, and she hopes she sees the debt for what it is. So... she's, like, feeling all these different lights, all this different magic around her, and she realized this is actually a really cool scene. I will say that. I would love to see this illustrated or, like, animated in some way. So Yrene, like, feels hands on her shoulders, and she lifts her head behind her and sees that Eretia and Hafiza had one hand on each of her shoulders, and then behind each of them, 2 more healers have a hand on each of their shoulders. So there's, like, 4 healers behind them. Then behind them, there's, like, another... 8. There's, like, 2 healers holding on to one on each shoulder for those 4, and just keeps going back and back and back. And Yrene can tell that it's, like, every healer from the Torre was there. And they're all channeling their power into Yrene, who is holding on to Chaol. So, like, they're all sharing their power so that Yrene can heal him. And he wakes up. And then he asks if he's dead. He's just like, dead? And she's like, no, alive. And the healing power was so great that the scar on his cheek from Selena is even gone. Which I don't like.
I wish it was still there because he deserved it. He deserved the reminder.
Yep. So, Nesrin explains to them that they left the what's it called?
Yeah. The Rook House. The clan home.
The mountains.
Yeah, that's a good one. The mountains.
Right away after getting his note, because it was very important.
And now we're help. Like, we don't even need to, he doesn't need to explain why it was important because they got there and he was in peril. So they're like, obviously it was important.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. No. They were like, we think healers are important. Yeah. Anyway. But then they were told by the guards to come here instead. And then...
They were faster than every single guard.
I know.
And you're like, maybe you should get new guards because that's not a good look.
It's true. But to be fair, it was sort of labyrinthy. I don't know how, because when Chaol and Yrene came through, it seemed very straightforward.
Yeah, they just repeated it like twice and then followed it.
But they just followed they just followed the footprints. So I don't understand how, like, Nesrin was like, we got lost a little bit, so the cats led us here.
And it's like, they got lost, why are the guards still not there?
Yeah. They also only sent for, like, a few healers. But as we remember, like, they all showed up. They all wanted to come, because they all wanted to support Yrene. they all then, like, look over at Duva, who's unconscious, and Hafiza's like, no, she'll stay unconscious. And they're like, even though she's got a Valg ring on? And she's like, yep, even with the Valg ring on. And I'm like, how does Hafiza know that?
Also, can somebody explain this magic and teach it to everybody else? Because,
yes!
this is...
so useful.
Right? Like, what is happening?
Anyway, then they learn about Yrene's cost. So, the Hafiza voice that we're assuming is the goddess Sybil. Silba, not Sybil. So we're assuming that the goddess Silba, like, sort of took over Hafiza's body for a little
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like... I thought the whole reason that Deanna was able to take over Aelin was because of the word mark.
The word ring.
Word key. Jesus Christ, we're killing it.
Yeah, we are definitely killing it right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really understand this goddess possession stuff, but I don't think it matters, so...
No, I don't think it does either. Anyway, so Yrene said she would pay, whatever the cost was, she would pay it. And now we're learning what that is. And so I guess all the healers knew what she was doing, I guess? Like, healing him, like, bringing him back, essentially, from the dead. Because he was about to die. So they had to restore balance, so they tied Chaol's life to Yrene's.
I don't understand how that's restoring balance.
Well, I guess because it was 2 lives, and one was going to be lost. So now it's technically still 1 life.
Okay.
Like, I think that's sort of what they mean.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yes. And plus, not only that, the damage to his spine, because again, of course, Duva had to attack the exact place that he was injured before. Mm-hmm. And he put his back to Duva because that's exactly what you do instinctually when you're trying to protect someone from someone else. You face the person that you're trying to protect. That is not ever how it works. You always put your back to the person that you're trying to protect. Always.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You are correct.
But that's besides the point. So obviously this damage to his spine was too great, so they can't repair it. So because his life is tied to Yrene's, her magic is acting as a brace. Similar actually to, remember, like, weeks and weeks and weeks ago when they were discussing just, like, haphazardly the different types of magical braces that you could do, but they were like, but we can't do either of those. And
foreshadowing, yes, but we didn't realize it.
Anyway, so her magic is going to act as a brace, allowing him to, like, walk normally and feel like he has no injury. However, when her magic is depleted or when she's tired, he will lose the ability to use his legs, and he'll have to use a cane or sometimes even the chair. But they actually did make it seem like more often than not it would probably be the cane. So, like, better off than he was before, but still could sometimes end up in the chair.
Yeah, and he was, like, completely healed at one point.
Yeah.
So it's like... But he was also almost dead, so I guess that's the other.
Yeah. Yrene asks, like, can't I just heal him again? But Hafiza just says, like, it's a part of the cost of him being alive. So, like, don't tempt the force that allowed this to happen. Because, like, I guess they're sort of saying, like, you know, maybe he wouldn't be alive. Like, whoever allowed this, like, you know, they want him to live with this. So, like, do it.
Yeah.
And Chaol tells Yrene that it is not a burden, and the chair is not a prison, and he is as much a man in that chair as he is out of it. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, where did this come from?
From her. Because she healed him.
I guess. It just, like, bothers me that, like, he hasn't really had super negative thoughts about being in the chair recently, but it's also because he hasn't really been in the chair as much recently.
Yeah.
So, like...
And I feel like Sarah J Maas wrote the last book, and by last book I mean Queen of Shadows, right?
Yes.
When this happened. She was like, you'll go get healed because you're in a wheelchair. And then people were like, that's not the right way that you should go about this.
Yeah, politically correctness, I guess.
Yeah, so I feel like she was like, well, I can't completely heal him because it's not realistic. But then she did completely heal him and then...
took it back.
Yeah, it's just... it's an interesting choice as a writer, I'll definitely say that. That is...
Yeah. I just, like... I don't know, I just feel like I understand that he has healed his emotional trauma, but I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like, and this is gonna sound weird, okay, I understand healing from emotional trauma. He thought a bunch of shit was his fault. He's reconciled with that, right? The same way that Aelin did in Air of Fire. Yeah. However, just because you've reconciled things, I don't think that absolves you from, like, feeling bad or sad about it, or sometimes a little bit guilty.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't understand how he can go from this person that literally hates himself, and then as he heals and, like, reconciles with his trauma, like, I don't know, it's like, when you're... I don't know. He also, he does it in one night. It's not like he put the work in. It's not like he went to therapy, learned to change his negative thoughts, which were, like, plaguing him his entire life since his father threw him out of his house. Yeah.
Like, he felt like he wasn't good enough since then. So as a child, and now, one night with his girlfriend, who isn't actually his girlfriend yet, he's, like, healed completely. Because, like, they only did the emotional work on that one night. He only really faced it all that one night.
Yeah.
Like, that's... as much as we, like, applaud Sarah J Maas for her mental health representation, there is a lot of, you find the right person and you're fixed.
But that's what I mean. That's not accurate.
It is not.
So, like, I don't know. I don't like this whole, like, him reassuring her now. Like, I wish that he felt a little bit still like, well, shit, I'll deal with it.
Like, I finally got it back.
Yeah. And
it felt so good, and I felt happy about it. You're allowed to grieve.
Yes.
The loss of it. And he should have, but I'm not telling him what he should do, obviously, but I feel like it would have been more realistic if he grieved the loss.
Yeah. But I understand at the same time that she didn't want to make it seem like that Sarah J Maas didn't want him grieving and then make Yrene feel bad. Because she would.
Yeah, but I think that is what happens in adult relationships.
Yeah.
Is if you're going to work through something, you can't just not tell them.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I just, it just, yeah, it didn't seem realistic as a response.
Based on his character progression so far. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Hafiza then tells them sort of the big deal with their relationship now. When one of them dies, they're both gonna die. Sort of a la Reese Faye Rabat, like, bargain moment. Because their lives are tethered now. So that's...
And I'm like, is this, like, Sarah J Maas trying to make us like them more because they have, like, a similar relationship to a couple we like?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't actually think so.
Yeah.
But...
So, Yrene then finally addresses Sartak and is just like, this is what Erewhon's going to do to everybody here. And Sartak's like, yeah, I know. Like, I feel like Sartak is the last person you need to convince, but it's like they haven't gotten the memo that he's the last person they need to convince.
Yeah, you don't need to tell him. He's very chill.
Aware.
He's on board.
And it sort of just insinuates that, like, he knows he's going to war, and, like, we already know that he's taking whatever routes will go.
Mm-hmm.
Chaol sort of notices, like, this bond between Sartak and Yrene and says, I also really am annoyed with how he describes it, because he's like, it's all shiny and new and tentative. It's like, dude, like, you have no idea what they've done and been through. Like,
yeah.
You know, I feel like he's, like, judging their, and being like, oh, precious, like, oh, you guys have something starting.
And he's so far along with... Yeah.
Anyway, so, but then him and Yrene have sort of a mind discussion because they, like, know each other so well. And, like, he shares a look saying that he's sorry and that he's happy for her. And
you can't share a look to say you're sorry, dude. You actually have to say it
yes!
at some point.
And also, what's the look for I'm happy for you?
Well, I can't do it. Like, I don't know. A giant smile and a thumbs up. Yeah. That's all I got.
Anyway, Sartak carries Duva to the Coggin, and Yrene insists that his whole family be there for the healing. And I'm like, you go, girl, because yes, they should.
Mm-hmm.
So all the siblings and the Coggin are super worried about Duva, but when Sartak explains that, like, she's possessed by a Valg demon because of the ring, Argan is, of course, a tool and doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
But then Sartak tells them that Parrington is actually Erewhon, and he sent the ring to trap her. And Argan, again, argues that these are all lies. And then the Coggin is like, oh yeah, she hasn't been the same in a while. And Argan's like, yes, she has. And it's like, dude, you're going against your dad. Like, your dad is saying she hasn't been the same.
It's just like...
He's in denial.
Yeah, but his character was the one that you were supposed to be like, is it him? He's a dick. So, like...
But it also never really got there. He wasn't around enough to arise suspicion.
No, but, like, it does make you wonder, like, why is he being so weird about this? Like, I guess he is in denial, but it's just, like... Is this just supposed to be, like, a red herring?
Can I just also say, why is his character necessary?
It's not.
He does
They just
nothing.
need more children to kill off, I guess. I don't know.
Anyway, Hafiza, like, sort of pipes up that, like, it's true, and Argan does shut his mouth at that because you don't mess with the healer on high. Which
I love. Yeah. He, like, talks back to his dad, but he's like,
I'm not going to talk back to the healer on high, which is great. And Caution actually, like, Caution pipes up here, too, and reprimands Argan and is like, what do you mean she's been the same? Like, you didn't spend any time with her, so how would you know?
Mm-hmm.
But Caution actually says, like, I just thought she was depressed from the marriage and the pregnancy. But, like, I'm like, she elected for the marriage. Like, before she was possessed by the Valg, she elected for this arranged marriage. So, like, and everyone's like, oh, her husband is so devoted to her. Like, why would she be depressed over a marriage to a dude that's devoted to her that she chose?
Yeah. It's also, like, that's gotta be weird, because, like, I guess they met a couple times before they got arranged marriage. So, like, he doesn't know her at all now.
But no. So, I'll explain my reasoning on that after.
Okay.
But just put a pin in it.
Okay.
And we'll come back to it, because I have a theory on that.
We'll circle back.
Yeah. Anyway, so, like, Caution actually puts it together that she killed Tumalin. He's like, oh my god, she did, didn't she? And Chaol confirms that she did, and that the Valg confessed to it. But then he did make sure to tell everyone that the Valg creature, like, was very vocal in telling him that Duva inside her mind was, like, thrashing and fighting against it. So, like, sort of setting it up to be like, she's not at fault.
Yeah.
They all ask Yrene if she can fix Duva, and Chaol reminds them then that this is just a taste of what havoc Erewhon will wreak, and that the Kaghan's land can help with the war. And, like, Argan is sort of... Argan is pissed that Chaol is, like, scheming right now. Because Chaol he's like, look at what's happening. Like, you guys can help. And you haven't committed. But Chaol reminds him, like, Erewhon has already reached this empire. Like, he is not content in the north. Like, people have already died because of him here. Like, you're being stupid, essentially.
Yeah.
And then Nezran tells the Kaghan that the Karankui are stirring again, who are creatures from the Valg realm. But, like, he literally just ignores everything and just asks Yrene to heal Duva. That's all. That's all he cares about. So she gets to work. She tries to pull off the ring, and she thinks about how much worse it is in her than in Chaol. Because, again, this is a full-blown Valg demon, not shadowy remnants of one. She can't get the ring off, so they actually have to call for, like, a blacksmith. And Duva's, like, screaming and arches off the bed or the couch or whatever she is in. And the Kaghan is, like, stressed that Yrene is hurting her. But Yrene fills herself and her hands with light and puts them on Duva's chest. And then she's, like, sucked inside and feels the presence of the Valg everywhere. And it's squatting like a tapeworm. And so she surrounds it with bands of her magic, filling every corner of Duva with light so it can't fester. And so it's almost like she's half present inside of Duva and then half present outside. And notices that when a blacksmith arrives and gets the ring off and finds the stone underneath the silver. And they're actually passing it around for everyone to look at on a handkerchief. And I'm just like, this is dumb. But whatever.
I just find it funny because I'm like, I guess they've heard about it from their spies.
Yeah.
But it's also like, they've just heard that people are wearing black collars or black rings. They don't really understand what it means. So they can pass it around, but it's like, what is it really telling them?
Yeah. So, she tells the Valg that she isn't afraid of it, and she pushes her magic at it, until she finally gets a look at its true form, and apparently it's, like, grotesque. It's got, like, fish-sharp teeth, gangly limbs, talons, slick gray skin, and large dark eyes. And she calls it a prince. And the Valg says, I'm not a prince, I'm a princess.
I am no man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Very reminiscent of but she's a princess, a Valg princess.
That'll come up again.
Yeah. So Yrene's light erupts, cleaving the darkness from Duva and devouring it until nothing remains. She snaps back into herself, and Duva, like, coughs and throws up. And then, like, smoke comes out of her mouth, which Yrene can feel as, like, the last remnant of the Valg demon. And, like, Duva's husband has run in, and he's there looking at her and looking, like, making eyes at her belly. And, like, Yrene is exhausted, but she's like, I'll have a look. So she uses, like, the tail end of her strength to check and see how the baby is. And she's like, it's healthy and it's human. So this is where my theory comes in.
Okay.
So my theory is that sometimes the Valg would take a back seat and let Duva out. Maybe, like, keeping control so that she doesn't say, like, there's Valg in me, or anything like that. But, like, enough that, or, like, maybe, like, playing with her memory so that she doesn't remember that bit, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in order, because, like, how else would would the baby be human? Like, if the Valg had truly taken control and was, like, you know.
Yeah, but isn't that the same with, like, Dorian? Like, his father had a Valg in him when he was conceived.
That's true. Well, then I don't know. That was my theory.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if, like, Valg just can't transfer to babies for some reason.
Maybe.
But then how shitty they talk about Holland, I'm like, well, he's obviously part of Valg.
He's an ass.
So I really don't know. And we
never find out.
These are the questions we never get answers to.
Yeah. So the Kagan then, like, after finding out that the baby is okay, the Kagan kneels forward and hugs Duva, and Argan, being the dick that he is, asks Duva if it's true. Like, and then Sartak's like, shut your mouth. It's like, dude, it's not the time. Your sister was literally just healed from possession. Like, give her a second.
Yeah.
But she does respond and say that, yeah, it's all true. Yrene then, like, steps away to give the family, like, some time. He's over by a pillar in his chair since her energy is gone, so he's in his wheelchair, and she sits in his lap.
He can't feel it.
Well, they're about to kiss when the Grand Empress runs in, and I'm like, no one thought to friggin' tell her? Or, like, go get her?
To watch this? Like, everyone else in her family is watching it, yeah.
Like, I just feel like they're treating her, like, with kid gloves. Like, she's this precious little vase. And, like, she rushes to Duva, but then Caution grabs her and speaks to her first, and she's, like, speaking really fast in whatever language it is that they speak. But, like, why did he grab her first?
I don't know, maybe to just stop her from, like, attacking. Like, not attacking, but, like, she just threw up and shit. She's not feeling well. Don't, like, run at her. And also, like, how did she know what was going on if she wasn't here? Did she just hear that she was possessed? Was she gonna run to kill her? Is that what she yelled? Like, we don't know what she said. Maybe she was like, bitch, get out of my child, and was running over to, like, strangle her. Like, I don't actually think that's what happened. But we literally have no idea.
Yeah. I just thought it was an interesting interaction, especially for them to then not tell us anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kagan then looks at Yrene and tells her that anything she desires is hers. She just has to ask. So then she's like, in that case, I have a favor.
Imagine.
But, like, we don't hear what it is at the time.
Before we leave the scene, I just had a thought.
Okay.
So, Yrene has discovered that the Valg are parasites.
Yes.
Parasites.
Yes.
So, I'm wondering if that's somehow tied to Crescent City. With the, like, parasites in the water. And the Valg do feed off of, like, power and happiness and shit. So, like, could it be that, like, it's something Valg in the water that is, like...
Maybe they've repurposed, like, Valg blood or something.
Yeah. Because there's a big theory around by, like, a bunch of people that are like, Bryce bled into the water in Akatar World, so the next book is going to have parasites in it. So, like...
Yes, I've heard that. I'm not looking forward to it.
Me neither. But it could be a way to bring Throne of Glass into the multiverse.
Yes.
I guess is the only thing.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah. Anyway.
So, next thing we know, Chaol, Yrene, Nezrin, and Sartak are back in Chaol's suite to just chat, to, like, talk things out. And Chaol thinks that him being in a chair like this when Yrene was weak isn't frustrating or a punishment, and that when it comes time to fight, he'll do it standing, on horseback, or in a chair if he has to. So again, very positive outlook from Chaol.
Because he's in love.
Yeah. So they asked Sartak and Nezrin how they knew they were in trouble, and Sartak reveals that Kaja actually saw Duva leave through the tunnels And she is in Sartek's employ. So remember at the beginning, we spoke about how the servants are all usually in one of the siblings' employ as a spy as well. And just feed them all the information. So we learn that Kaja is Sartek's.
And it's definitely because he was just wondering what Nesrin is doing.
Yeah.
Because he loved her before he met her. Yeah. So he was like, I want to know if they're in the same bed.
Yep. And actually, that's probably one of the things, that she did tell.
Just funny.
Yrene says that, like, they're going to have to shield. Like, they thank Kaja, who's, like, standing right there. So they thank her, and then they're like, we need to shield her from Argan, because Argan is just pissed about everything that's happened. He's not like, oh my god, thank you for saving my sister. He's just angry that Kaja didn't tell him about it, even though it saved Duva's life.
I expected, this isn't really related to this specific part, but I expected Yrene to apologize for being a cold, hard bitch when she yelled at Kaja. Was that last week when all the stuff was ruined? Yeah. Like, I just expected her to actually apologize, and we don't get it at all. And it just doesn't seem in character for her. So it's just so weird. No. Anyway.
Well, I guess, she's a servant. You can treat servants terribly and it's okay.
Good point.
So Nesrin then tells them finally who Maeve is and that she's the Valg Queen and everything they learned while they were gone about the Karen Queen and all that jazz and, like, I guess the history of Maeve and her husband. And then they surmise together that the owl Maeve keeps on her shoulders, probably a Fae healer that she lets everyone believe is just a pet. So, like, that means that Fae is literally in owl form all the time, which sucks. Yeah. Yrene then tells the group that the Valg told her before she destroyed it that it was a princess, not a prince, which corroborates what the spiders told Nesrin about female Valg and how they're special. Although I don't know what was special about this Valg apart from being a princess. Like, it didn't showcase any special abilities that we know of.
No. Maybe it had a bit more, like, sneakiness. It wasn't so obvious that it was, like, a dead person inside. It could actually act semi-human.
Yeah. Anyway, so they know now that, like, the scrolls they have, Aelin needs to read them. So Sartek tells them that they did not ride back alone, and that he brought half of the Rook Riders with him, which is 1,000. And that sort of means that, like, combined with any witch they can get on side, like the 13, because they already know that at least some witches are on their side. It means that, like, this aerial legion could give them a fighting chance against Morath. But in my head, I'm like, is that really that many, though? Because right now it's 1,013 against all the things that fly from Morath. Like, that doesn't seem like that many.
No, because they literally just threw a bajillion Ilkin into the marshes for Aelin to kill.
Yeah. So, like, if 500 Ilkin, they could just toss them that way for funsies. I can only imagine how many witches there are, for sure. Plus other things.
Yeah.
Anyway, they then think about how they can take soldiers from Morath by healing them, and that will sort of lessen, but I feel like that just seems like a lot of work for a very little reward.
Yeah.
Like, you have to expend almost all of your power on one soldier. That doesn't seem worth it. Not that one person's life is not worth it, but, like, in terms of...
it's not about the life. It's, like...
numbers
also,
wise.
One by one taking numbers away from Morath. They're not going to be able to fight for you when they're done because they're going to be exhausted and depressed and fucked in the head.
Yeah.
Like,
Anyway, Yrene says that she has ideas on how to incapacitate them, to heal them, but she needs Aelin. Don't know why.
And, like, just ask Hafiza how she knocked her
Yes!
out.
Anyway, then Hussar comes in and declares that she's going with them. With whatever ships in her armada she can spare. Because Yrene saved Duva, and Duva is the best of them. And she doesn't want her sister looking over her shoulder in fear. And it's funny, because Chaol sort of gives her a look, and she understands that look. And Chaol sort of, like, judging her of, like, yeah, she doesn't have to look over her shoulder, except from, like, you guys, when one of you becomes heir and starts killing each other. But then she gives him a look or says something back to be like, never Duva. Like, sort of like, we all know Duva's off limits. Like, no one's gonna kill her. And I'm thinking in my head, someone needs to tell Argan.
That's true.
Anyway, so I guess now we have, like, some semblance of some sort of force. Right? We've got 1,000 Rook Riders. Plus, then we've got Hussar's naval fleet.
Yeah.
Then we go to Nesrin's point of view. So she is wandering the halls alone, heading to Kadara's minaret, Kadara's little tower. She wanted to give Chaol and Yrene time alone. Sartaq and Hussar also went to, like, spend time with their family and discuss things. I think they had, like, a meeting. I think Sartaq said he had a meeting with the Kagan. So yeah, she wanted to give Chaol and Yrene alone time. Bound chicka wow wow. Like, she legit says she can only imagine what they're getting up to in there. And then a messenger boy shows up and gives her a letter dated 2 weeks ago from her uncle. And she reads it and races down the stairs. We don't actually know what it says. So the next, like, it cuts to her flying through town on the Rook she claimed before leaving. So he's the Rook that Sartaq told her, like, lost his rider and was waiting in the tower. Yeah, I know. So cute.
So happy.
He was waiting in the tower for a rider to come and, like, claim him. So, and they sort of insinuated that she should do it. And she was like, oh, you know, but, like, I'm not coming back here. I'm going home. So
it wouldn't be fair to either of us.
But then she just decided to do it anyway, so, like, great. So his name is Salki, and she lands at her uncle's house, and surprise, surprise, her father and sister and her nieces and nephews arrived and are there safe and sound. She's been worried about them this whole time since Rifthold was sacked, and they're there.
Yay. She deserves it. She deserves everything.
So, 2 hours later, Sartaq finds her at her uncle's house, being escorted, like, she's on her way out. She's on her way, like, she's getting ready to leave her uncle's house, and her father is walking her to her Rook. And Sartaq says, like, he came to welcome them, and then the kids run out to, like, pet Kadara and Salki. So then he asks, he, like, has pleasantries with Nesrin's dad, and then he asks Nesrin to walk with him. So they head behind the house to an alley, and I'm like, what kind of a walk is this? You're just hiding away.
Yeah.
And then he tells her he spoke with his father, and she thinks that he's going to tell her that, like, they can't be together now because he's a prince, and, like, she's waiting for she's feeling quite disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that he told his father that he was taking the Rooks into battle, with or without his consent, because it's the right thing to do. And because the woman he loves is going, and he is going to follow her.
No.
I know. And then, the Kagan is a jackass and tells him that the heir of the Kaganate needs to marry a noble. Someone with lands to offer. So Sartaq tells him if that's what he needs, then he doesn't want it, and he walks out. And Nesrin asks him if he is insane.
Yep.
And he said...
Which is kind of fair, because, like, he was like, you're my heir now. Yeah. You have this is all yours. And he's like, nah, I choose the girl.
Yeah. Well, but then he says, like, he hopes not, because his father didn't let him leave the room before naming him heir. So I guess that was the right answer.
Yeah.
for the Coggin, so he named Sartek the heir anyway. And then Sartek tells Nezran that they're going to go to war, they're going to win, they're going to shatter Erewhon's forces, and when they do, they will return here together and stay here for the rest of their days. Sort of insinuating that, hey girl, hey, we getting married.
You're going to be the Cogginate, the Coggin queen, the
Coggin Empress?
Empress, yes, Empress. You said Empress earlier.
I did.
Forgot
I
what
love
it was
that
called.
word. I don't know why, but it just sounds so pleasing to the ear.
It's fancy.
Empress. I just like saying it.
That's fair.
It's weird. Anyway, they kiss then. They have a nice kiss. And then Nezran tells him after, like, yeah, we'll go to war, but then we'll see what comes after. She's not sold on the marriage, but, like, apparently he gives her a look that's like, we're gonna do it. Like, he's sure.
Yeah, which is like, come on, man, let's...
Consent!
There's a fine line between cocky and consent.
Yeah. So, Yrene's point of view, it's 2 weeks later, and they're on a ship. And Caution comes to say goodbye. And he tells her that he actually is really nice. He says, like, I wish I hadn't said anything that day in the desert. Like, I really missed having you as a friend. Mm. And he says, like, now he goes north, like, who knows what's in store for him. And, like, that's cute. I hope he finds someone in Kingdom of Ash.
I hope he does, too.
So, Yrene thinks to herself that, like, the city has been celebrating since the announcement that Sartek would be the heir. And she sees relief in Caution's eyes, and also in the other siblings' eyes when she's spoken to them. And I'm like, even Argan? I don't think you would see relief in his eyes.
Is it just relief that their sister's okay? Like, what do you mean relief?
I think she's insinuating relief that, like, they aren't the heir.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, she feels sad to be leaving the Torre, but she's excited for things to come. Then we go to Chaol's point of view. So, we skip another 2 weeks. This is a full month now. And he's seasick for the first few days on the water, but the bonus of having Yrene as a healer, she can help make him feel better. So
in more than one way.
Yeah. So he wraps his arms around Yrene, and their rings touch, and we learn that they got married.
Okay.
And like, apparently, he was like, she was sitting in a courtyard, and like things had just never been so clear for him, and he just got down on one knee and asked her. And she said yes.
He's just obsessed.
He is. And to make matters worse, they are also resting, like she had her hand resting on her belly. And then he puts his hand like almost on top of hers. So like, it's just an insinuation. Focus on the belly. She prego.
Yeah.
But, like, this bothers me because he's getting what he always wanted as right away.
Well, and also, immediately met Aelin and was like, I'm going to marry her. And, I mean, Selena, you know. But he's just, like, I don't know. I just don't think... That's all... It's like he just needed somebody to stand in there and he would marry them.
Yes.
Like, it's not like it didn't matter which person it was. He was just going to marry them.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much, this is what I wanted. It doesn't matter as much who it is.
Mm-hmm. And, like, I will say, it'd be... Can you imagine if they did break up and their lives are still tied together and their power is still tied together? And Yrene is just, like, every day, like, working herself to the bone out of spite to make sure he can't walk. Like, I want to read that story.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny, actually. He also thinks about how, like, Aretia is a healer, like, and is along for the ride, so we're insinuating that they've brought a few with them. He thinks about, like, how they had a really simple ceremony, but Hasar threw them, like, the mother of all receptions, and it was wild, and as a wedding gift, she actually gave Chaol Fashara, which is like the hellish horse he rode in the desert, and gave Yrene the horse she rode. So then, like, I guess in a moment of contemplation, Yrene, like, so again, remember, for her birthday, Chaol gave her a little locket for her to put her note from Aelin in. Mm-hmm. So she's been wearing it like that ever since. So she took the note out of her locket and tells him that she doesn't really need this note anymore because she's no longer alone and she's found her courage. And she opens the note and finally shows it to Chaol, which is like the first time she's physically shown him the note. Like, before, she's only told him what it said. And he immediately recognizes the handwriting. Yeah. And immediately realizes who the stranger was. And he was like, oh, like lining up the time periods and being like, she must have been 16, almost 17, and heading to the Red Desert to train. And it's like, how are you figuring all that shit out?
Yeah.
So he sort of thought that Aelin couldn't imagine what that kindness could have done. Like, she had no idea what that kindness has done for him and for Yrene. And then we reveal what the favor was that Yrene asked. It was to save her people. Like, that was it. Just save her people.
Yeah. But I will say, too, sorry, I don't know if you're about to say it, but Chaol knows who it is, but he doesn't tell his wife who it is. And she's fine with it. Can you imagine? I'd be like, what do you mean? What does that mean?
Well, he sort of teases her and is like, oh, it's a long story. And she's like, we have time. And he's like, I'll tell you it. I'll tell you over lunch. And I would also be like, no, asshole, tell me now.
What are you saying?
But, like, I guess she loves him, so she's indulging him a bit.
Okay, fine.
Anyway, so the Kagan is sending 1,000 ships from Hasar's armada, filled with Caution's foot soldiers and Dargan cavalry, along with 1,000 Rook riders and 300 healers. So going with them now is only half that force. The other half is to come when the rest are ready. But this confused me because it says they're sending 1,000 ships, right? Mm-hmm. And then saying they're sailing with half. They don't say half of 1,000. They just said they're sailing with half of their force and the other half are coming later. But I even wrote it down. Page 671 of my digital book says he's sailing with 1,000 ships behind him. So that's not half of 1,000. That is 1,000. So is he saying that it's gonna be 2,000 and the 1,000 is half, or is it half and it's...
Is he saying, like, metaphorically, he's sailing with 1,000 ships behind him?
I don't... Yeah, that's...
Yeah. I do not know.
I found that challenging.
Yeah.
Chaol sort of realizes that all the pain he's been through has led him here, exactly where he wants to be. And then, like I said, he doesn't tell Yrene who wrote the note.
Oh, sorry.
And she asks, like, what made him react, because I guess, like, he had a look on his face. And then he just sort of teases her and says, oh, it's a long story, I'll tell you over lunch. And she's like, okay. Then we get I'm calling it the epilogue, but it's called Fireheart. So.
And it's fucking awful.
It is fucking awful. So, like, again, we've said it several times that Empire of Storms came out in 1 year. And then the next year, this book came out. And Empire of Storms really left us on this heart-wrenching cliffhanger of Aelin being taken by Maeve and locked in an iron coffin, and Rowan, like, vowing to look for her. So we didn't get, obviously, any update on Aelin this whole book. in theory, like, again, we've talked about it earlier, that there's realistically a 2-year wait between knowing what happens to Aelin. So this was sort of, I feel like, the one little taste. Like, hey, this is how she's doing. So Aelin is entombed in iron and darkness and forced to sleep with, like, a sweet smoke. It's very metaphorical, this whole thing. Like, she's drifting through seas and fire, singing to the darkness with no beginning, middle, or end. So, like, she's not even aware of, like, time or anything. And, like, she can't feel the wind on her face, and she stayed in the darkness with the mask on until a face appeared. The face of an ancient queen, Maeve. And the queen's huntsman grabbed her from the coffin and held her upright, and she's still chained. And she tries to grab at the flame that ebbed away from her, but she can't. And the ancient queen smiles at her and says, "Let's begin." And that's the end.
Rude.
Yeah, so it's obviously a challenging spot. Like, here's your one little taste of what's happening to Aelin, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. Like, clearly the huntsman is Cairn, and they're about to, like,
torture her.
Cut her.
Something's awful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is something. It is a pretty sad ending. It's like, but again, it's such an SJM thing to do where she, like, punches you in the jugular with feels. But yeah, so that's it. We're done. We have finished our tandem read.
Yay!
Of Empire of Storm and Tower of Dawn.
So, yeah. So, Empire of Storms came out September 2016. Tower of Dawn came out September 2017. And Kingdom of Ash was October 2018. So it was 2 years and a month.
Yeah.
Garbage, yeah.
But yeah, I think both of us, everyone already knows how we feel about this series. We are wild about it, crazy about it. We could take or leave Chaol, to be honest. He's a POS.
But I did hate him less reading the Tandem.
Yeah.
Did I? I don't know. I hated myself less.
Yeah.
reading the
we didn't have to read constantly about him. We tore him apart in this. And it's
100%. Yeah. So I did like it. I liked it.
Yeah. We liked it. So I guess we're gonna wrap it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at Coffee and Co-Read, and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week, it's finally a new book. We're going to be doing Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. It's the second book in the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. And we're going to be doing chapters 1 to 7. So make sure to go back and listen to Kingdom of the Wicked. And also follow along. We'll post our schedule on Instagram and Facebook. So, yeah. So if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.